Part 103. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Enchenmi San. Chapter 1061. The body in the black coffin has also reached the level of demigodization? What is the difference between that and the demigodization of the white coffin that the undead crew will pursue? To be precise, the body in the black coffin is one step closer to semi-deification, and only half a step away from complete deification. Of course, deification here is just a term derived from the Alpha civilization, and it contains exaggerated rhetoric. We are still far away from that existence. As for the difference is huge. The body in the white coffin has the personality of a fool, that is, the one whose cognition has been eroded. The washing out the tendons and marrow function of the black and white coffin can only remove the physical body. The brand effect on the consciousness is almost negligible. If the body in the white coffin is semi-deified, the consciousness of this body will be 100% super-eroded and become a loyal slave of that existence. But the black coffin is different. The body inside has no personality. It is just a tool without self-awareness. Even after it becomes demigodized, it will not be affected by that existence. Of course, regarding the information about the black and white coffin, what the fool revealed to the undead crew was a mixed version of truth and falsehood. They have always been kept in the dark, even after the super eclipse. But, you telling me these things will not be of any real help to me now? Kaylan frowned and said, "Did you send the ciphertext of the ultimatum?" "Yes," the information dealer responded. "Then you should also know that there is not much time left for us. Even if the fool has played tricks on them 100 times and 10,000 times, as long as the roots of this giant tree penetrate into the earth of Alpha Star, all plans will be over. It will lose its meaning," Kaylan said. "The people in the Immortal Crew Association also know very well that since the plan to use the fool doesn't work at the beginning, then we should simply change the way. Do you think the fool will count on today's scene?" Of course, the intelligence dealer laughed. "The Crown of Ashes Mutant No. 194 is the official name of this giant tree, but for convenience, the undead crew will privately prefer to call it the Tree of Destruction. The genetic sample of the Crown of Ashes was taken out by the fool himself from the ruins of Alpha civilization, and sealed in the underground ice house by himself. Do you think he can't account for this? Then what's his response? That's what you're doing now, blow it up. Since the fool knew that the world-destroying tree was a hidden danger, why didn't he get rid of it in the first place? Instead, he had to wait until all the undead crew members were super-eclipsed and the world-destroying tree took root." Kaylan suddenly paused at this point. After a pause, his tone turned low. "Could it be that this is part of the fool's plan?" "Yes, the erosion of the members of the undead crew is irreversible, and for them who have obtained near immortal life and supreme power, it is simply impossible to ask them to sacrifice themselves for human civilization. Selfishness is human. This is especially true for those in high positions. Although they are well aware of their situation, there will always be people who are lucky. And the word lucky is absolutely not allowed to appear in the fool's plan," the intelligence dealer continued. "The Tree of Destruction will absorb all life on the Ark, including the members of the undead crew. After they all merge with the Tree of Destruction, the Tree of Destruction will be destroyed once and for all." "What about the other people? Where are the other people on the Ark? Are they also discarded pawns in the plan?" Kaylan suddenly felt a surge of anger in his heart. If this is the case, the fool's plan is heretical in nature. What's the difference between those crazy people in the sect? There is a difference, and the difference is huge. Because the heretical sect relies on the power of that existence, which means that they can never achieve their goals. No matter how hard they try, as long as they cannot erase the imprint of that existence, they will only end up with nothing. Will become his slave or food. The fool has always remained awake, and his plan is feasible. It is for this reason that the survivors of the Alpha civilization chose the fool after they came into contact with him as the designated successor of this great relay of human civilization. The information dealer did not give Kaylan a chance to refute, and continued, Surviving in this universe is inherently cruel. Most of your memories come from the era after Ark settled down on Alpha Star. This era is very close. The peaceful era on Earth in the old era. People who live in such an era will never understand how difficult it is to survive in those turbulent times and how low human life is. During the interstellar drifting period, people on the Ark would risk their lives for a bag of synthetic starch, at the bottom of the hive city. In order to have a full meal, the bottom hive residents would not hesitate to join the surface exploration team and run there. Going up to the ground where the survival rate is almost zero, for the leaders of human civilization, two options are before them. One option is to destroy the civilization, and the other option is to sacrifice 99% of the people and let the remaining 1% can continue the fire of civilization. Anyone will choose the latter without hesitation. You are changing the concept. Do you have to sacrifice tens of millions of people on the Ark to defeat the undead crew? If there weren't tens of millions of people left as bait, do you think the undead crew would start the sacrifice plan? Even if you can rescue everyone on the Ark, what if the undead crew will decide to start a tug of war with you? Do you know how many people will die because of this war with no end in sight? They will keep dragging you until the final moment. Yagonactor will never lose the chance to escape, and the survivors, the humans in the Alliance, will also be mixed with a large number of people who have been eroded and branded. You will never know whether the people around you are enemies or friends. Alpha civilization, and every human civilization that participated in the relay before, have done for us everything will be wasted. The information dealer paused and sighed softly. Furthermore, Yagonactor is only a semi-finished product. The time left for Alpha Planet and human civilization is not enough for you to build a sustainable environment in the internal ecological zone. The ecological cycle of all people, in short, Yagonactor cannot support that many people. In order to ensure that disasters will not come, the hive civilization implements almost cruel survival rules, but they still fail to hold on to that line of defense. In order not to repeat their mistakes, we must be stricter and crueler to ourselves. You have to think of yourself as a machine that can only have reason but not emotion. But the more people who can escape with Yagonactor, the greater the possibility that human civilization will continue. Isn't this true? Kaylan said, unconvinced. With the current strength of the Survivor Alliance, count the population. After the war is over, there will probably be even fewer people left, and maybe we will become extinct silently while drifting across the stars. For interstellar drifting, population is not a reliable insurance. The intelligence dealer's tone suddenly became extremely serious and calm. Any unexpected event can reduce the population to an extremely exaggerated level. Ark travel, the wormhole has resulted in the loss of nearly half of the population, and this wormhole was arranged by the Alpha civilization. They have used all means to ensure that the people on the Ark survived as much as possible. If this wormhole is really a natural wormhole, if so, guess how many % of the people on it will survive after the Ark passes through? Kaylan, I don't know. There will be nothing. The Ark will be torn apart by the terrifying gravity while passing through the wormhole, and all matter will be reduced to molecular level particles. No one will survive, the intelligence dealer said. Kindness and compassion. The quality of a leader may make a leader loved by the people, but a qualified leader will only let the people see the kindness he shows, but will not really let kindness dominate his will. Are you trying to tell me that kindness cannot control soldiers? What you control is not just the soldiers, but the fate of the entire human civilization. So you must maintain absolute rationality. The intelligence dealer gradually increased his tone. The fool also knows very well that there are also fragile places in his heart. This is the inevitability of human nature. He has sealed this part of his personality in you, firstly, so that the plan can be carried out accurately, and secondly, for your birth, because only a person with humanity in his heart can firmly resist the erosion of your will. Have you often felt that you have turned into a monster, but in your heart you firmly believe that you are a human being? That's right. Human nature is the only force that can resist this kind of erosion. If any other personality were placed in the white coffin, the erosion would not be able to be suppressed to this extent. Because a personality like me would feel that becoming a monster would make me becoming stronger, the human body is fragile and useless, the intelligence dealer sighed in a low voice, but human nature is also your weakness, and my duty is to remind you when necessary and help you get rid of those weaknesses. So you're calling now, telling me that tens of millions of people on the Ark were sacrificed just so that the fool's plan could be implemented smoothly. Kaylan took a deep breath, and he always felt something bad in his heart, even though he still thinks that he and the fool are not the same person until now. As part of the fool's plan, he always feels that he needs to be responsible for the sacrifices of tens of millions of people. If I tell you that more than half of the tens of millions of people are clones, their lifespan is very limited, and the proportion of clones will only get higher and higher in the future, will you feel better? Said the intelligence dealer. He seemed to be able to feel the change in Ian's inner thoughts, and his tone began to become less heavy. Maybe, let's not talk about it for now. Since you called, you should tell me what to do next, right? Kaylan brought the topic back to normal. My plan is to send the annihilation bomb into the main root of the tree of destruction, then detonated, but now I cannot determine the location of the main root of the tree of destruction, and I cannot enter the core area of the Ark. Since you are looking for the taproot of the world-destroying tree, what are you doing here? The information dealer said with a hint of smile. Kaylan was not sure whether it was ridicule or something else. I don't know. I always feel that there may be something very important in the underground ice house. This is what my subconscious told me. Kaylan was stunned for a moment and whispered, this subconscious is also what the fool left in me. In his head, right? Just to make me act like a chess piece according to the route he set? Pretty much, you can understand it that way. Then if I am a person full of rebellious thoughts, I will not do whatever my subconscious tells me to do. What should a fool do? Then this is not called the subconscious mind, the intelligence dealer replied. It is difficult for people to really resist the subconscious mind. There are indeed very important things in the 5th floor of the underground ice house, but the next task can only let you. The little girl next to you did it alone. As for you, you may have to leave Alpha Planet temporarily. What? The vitality of the tree of destruction is far beyond your imagination. No matter whether it is an annihilation bomb or Yagonactor's 0.2% power star destroyer cannon, even if it hits its main root directly, it cannot be killed. You need more powerful weapons, the intelligence dealer said. A more powerful weapon? This is already the most powerful weapon we can find. No. The Alpha civilization left you a Star Destroyer cannon that can be fired at full power. Only with it can you destroy the Tree of Destruction. The Star Destroyer cannon left behind by Alpha civilization, are you talking about? Yes, this cannon is on top of the locked Twin Moon Fortress, the intelligence dealer continued. The annihilation bomb and Yagonak toll are just a cover to attract the attention of the undead crew. You have to take this opportunity to enter the Twin Moon Fortress to restart the Star Destroyer cannon. Is this also the plan that the fool made back then? Yes. Twin Moon Fortress is an absolute restricted area in this space. Any aircraft approaching will be immediately destroyed by the fortress's defensive firepower. How can I get in? Just go in, the intelligence dealer said. As long as you reveal your identity and state your purpose of coming, the Alpha people who are staying at the Twin Moon Fortress will let you in. Are there any Alpha people left on the Twin Moon Fortress? Kaylan was a little surprised in his heart, but felt that this was unexpected and reasonable. A scholar had put forward the statement a long time ago, if the Alpha people survived, apart from the buried ruins, the most likely ones would be on the 2 moons surrounding Alpha Star. Perhaps because the Ark civilization has made almost zero progress in exploring the double moon, various legends related to the double moon have never ceased, but few people take these legends seriously. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen-Mi-san. Chapter 1062. Yes, although the security system of the Twin Moon Fortress is locked, there are still a considerable number of Alphas remaining inside. These people are all survivors of the time and space paradox, and almost all are members of the Night Watch organization. As long as if you can find them, they will definitely help you, the intelligence dealer said with certainty. But is there enough time? According to the ultimatum you issued, in 8 hours at most, the roots of the world-destroying tree will penetrate the arc and penetrate into the Earth of Alpha Star. By that time, even if the world-destroying tree and the Alpha Star has merged into one, I can't blow up the entire Alpha Star, right? Such a big movement might attract his attention. Planet Alpha and human civilization are insignificant to him, but that doesn't mean that he can't notice anything. This is like an ant nest several meters high. Humans living nearby may not notice the changes in the number and type of ants in the ant nest, but if the ant nest collapses suddenly, it will definitely attract human attention. 8 hours is more than enough, the intelligence dealer said. Are you kidding me? Even if I take Yagonactor, take off from the surface of Alpha Star, and arrive at Xuanjiao in 8 hours, it won't be enough, right? Kailan said, unless you can find a direct route for me come through the space channel of Xuanjiao. To tell you the truth, there really is a space passage, and it's right here, the intelligence dealer said. In addition to the Yinglong's egg sealed in the 5th floor of the underground ice house, there is also a tunnel leading to the Crescent Moon's space beacon. As long as ZE Logo injects enough energy into the space beacon, a space channel can be opened directly to the Crescent Moon. However, this space channel can only be maintained for a short time, and it can only for you to pass alone. Kailan was stunned. Is this also the fool's arrangement? Yes. Why can he calculate so accurately? Kailan asked puzzledly. Is it possible that he is a person who has traveled from another parallel time and space and has already seen what will happen in the future? No. No, even if he can predict the future, but if you want to interfere with the future, even the smallest changes will trigger a series of butterfly effects. At the beginning, history may still deviate from the original trajectory, but as these subtle changes continue cumulatively, quantitative changes will eventually lead to qualitative changes. When the fool was formulating his plan, he drained the computing power of the 17 living supercomputers left behind by the Alpha civilization, and then sealed a quarter of his personality into the core master brain, and used the core master brain to continuously carry out calculation, while fine-tuning the details of the plan. Almost all possible situations have been calculated, unless that existence directly interferes with the plan. Of course, if that existence really intervenes, then the plan is not planned, that is, it doesn't matter at all. I probably understand, but the problem is that the underground ice house has been completely occupied by the roots of the world-destroying tree. What should I do now? Kailan stopped mid-sentence. He originally wanted to ask himself how he could enter the 5th floor of the underground ice house to activate the space beacon, but now he already had the brand new trump card of the Twin Moon Fortress. There is no need to hide the ultimate annihilation bomb and Yagonactor's Star Destroyer cannon. The only problem that needs to be solved now is how to get in touch with the people who are staying behind Yagonactor. The Communication Technology Research Branch of the Institute is 2 kilometers away from you. Although the building has collapsed, the communication equipment excavated from the ruins of the Alpha civilization were all installed in safes made of nano-alloy and remained intact. The information dealer said. As for how to use it, well, you should already know it by now. As soon as he finished speaking, Ian's memory directly contained an additional part about how to use these communication devices. To be precise, it was unlocked from the sealed memories. 25 minutes later, Yagonactor. Old dog. I received an encrypted message from the Ark. It uses the secret code of our hunting group. Leighton, who was guarding the console, suddenly shouted. It was sent by Kailan. Finally, there's news about that kid, the Hound, who was sitting on the sofa beside him in a daze, suddenly jumped up and rushed to the console in 3 steps at a time. What's the content? Immediately launch the Star Destroyer cannon on Yagonactor, hitting coordinates N59 F16, E06C75. Where are these coordinates? Mark them on the map for me, said the Hound. It's, Arc West District 1, the former site of the Research Institute, Leighton typed on the holographic keyboard, and a red dot near the center of the Arc's floor plan was marked, flashing one after another. Research Institute, the Hound was startled, but, didn't this giant tree grow out of the core area of the Arc? What's the use of bombarding the location of the Research Institute? Could it be that its roots have grown crookedly and are growing on the Institute's base? Underground, the Hound asked doubtfully. Then old dog, do we still need to fire? Open. Why not? Hound said immediately, the Star Destroyer cannon will start charging immediately. After charging is completed, it will fire. The target of the bombardment is the former site of the Research Institute. The Hound paused for a moment, as if remembering something, and then issued a second order, let the Sci-Fi and all its combat units move closer to us to cover the charging of the Star Destroyer cannon. Got it. Leighton nodded vigorously and typed quickly on the keyboard with both hands. Valentina and Chi Hanfin looked at each other, and both of them ran towards the hangar in tacit understanding. As for Asano Akira, he pulled out half an inch of the sword from his arms and gently rubbed the smooth spine of the sword with the pad of his index finger. The Sci-Fi, which was still hovering over the Arc, began to retreat slowly. The fighter jets cruising around the battleship all returned to the hangar. Several turrets on the deck turned at the same time and fired in the direction of the Arc and the giant tree. A series of smoke bombs were fired, and the smoke bombs exploded in mid-air, forming a huge high-heat smoke belt mixed with metal debris. Under the cover of the smoke belt, the Sci-Fi gradually moved closer to Yagonactor. Past. As for the ground troops that had been standing still, they began to mobilize. Hundreds of vehicles were galloping in the wilderness. One after another, anti-aircraft gun positions were set up below Yagonactor. Anti-aircraft gun barrels of different calibers were deployed. They were erected one after another, and the black muzzles pointed directly at the crown of the giant tree directly above. Old dog, all combat units have entered the designated positions. The aviation brigade has been resupplied, and the armored units have gathered on the deck. All possible preparations have been made. Leighton turned back and said to the Hound in a deep voice. Start charging. Following the Hound's command, Yagonactor's drop-shaped head opened a gap hundreds of meters wide, and a rod-shaped object with a sharp front end, about 15 meters in diameter, and an unknown material emerged from the gap. He poked it out and pointed directly at the Arc 20 kilometers away. Valentina had already sat in the cockpit of the blasphemer Mecha. She clearly felt a slight shake in Yagonactor. Then, a light ball that could not be seen directly with the naked eye began to move around the rod-shaped object. The front end condenses. Just as the Hound had predicted, when Yagonactor's Star Destroyer cannon began to charge, those insect-like monsters once again flew out of the canopy of the giant tree, but this time their number was significantly reduced. There are more. Not only that, many insect-shaped monsters exploded after flying not far from the tree crown, and their bodies turned into scattered powder. These powders seemed to be attracted by something in mid-air, and during the process of falling, they exploded. They gathered together again, forming monsters of different shapes one after another. The officers and soldiers of the Survivor Alliance noticed that most of these monsters were indigenous creatures already on Alpha Planet, but compared to those indigenous creatures, these monsters made of white powder were more aggressive in appearance. For example, the largest monster simulates the appearance of a thunder beast, but the surface of the pair of scythes has many sharp serrations. The original blunt toenails of the thunder beast have also become sharp and long claws. The length of the bone spurs has more than doubled. The most terrible thing is that this thunder beast has actually grown 2 pairs of huge wings. Although the lift provided by these 2 pairs of wings is not enough to levitate the thunder beast in the air, it gives it the ability to adjust its direction in the air. If it were to just fall on the Arc, the shock wave it would cause would be enough to knock down a large number of people. Attack! The whole army attacks. The first to fire were the mecha troops gathered on the deck of Yagonactor. Under the leadership of Valentina, a dense firepower net enveloped the swooping monsters, followed closely by the Scati. The plasma main cannon, 3 bright balls of plasma passed directly above Yagonactor, and all monsters in contact with it were turned into ashes in an instant. Countless fighter jets and flying mechas took off from the hangar and deck of the Scati, and rushed up from both sides against the edge of the monster group, using airborne weapons to continuously cut into the monster formation. Although compared with the overall number of monster groups, the results of these combat units are almost negligible, but they still tried their best to reduce the number of monsters rushing towards Yagonactor, almost risking their lives. Quantity. The most efficient weapon is the main gun of the heavy cruiser Scati. Every time it is fired, it can create a large blank area among the monsters, but the biggest flaw of the triple plasma heavy gun is that it cannot fire continuously. Before the next shot is ready, the vacancies created by the previous shot will be filled by subsequent monsters in the blink of an eye. Leighton. How long? The Hound stood next to the blasphemer mecha, looking up at the dark group of monsters directly above, and roared at the intercom. 10 seconds left. Why is it still so long, huh? Wait, you said 10 seconds, the Hound was stunned for a moment, with a look of disbelief on his face. At the same time, he muttered softly, why is it like this time, quick. 5 seconds, Leighton's speaking speed became even faster, I don't know, anyway, the progress bar of this thing is almost reaching the top, maybe the principle of the launch mechanism is different from that of electromagnetic pulse, okay, charging is complete. Do you want to fire now? Open. Open the hum. The light ball condensed at the tip of the rod-shaped object gradually expanded to about 100 meters in diameter. After Leighton photographed the launch button, the originally huge light ball looked like a red giant that suddenly collapsed into a white dwarf. The star shrank to the size of a ping-pong ball in an instant, and the light that was so dazzling that it was impossible to look directly was extinguished, leaving only a murky dark gray. The next moment, the gray sphere broke away from the front end of the rod-shaped object and flew towards the arc at a slow speed. This slow speed is relative to those who are observing it, but no one noticed that when the gray sphere flew slowly in the air, everything around it slowed down, and those shooting into the air bullets can be caught by the naked eye, and the flapping wings of the monsters rushing down have become clearly identifiable. This thing also comes with a bullet time special effect, a thought came to Hound's head. Just when he exhaled the breath he was holding in his throat, it seemed that it would take a long time to fly there. The gray sphere of the arc then disappeared from sight. In the distance, Arc's energy shield flickered a few times and disappeared completely. A huge pit appeared silently on the west side of the core area. 0.13% power, is it so terrifying? Hound couldn't help but shudder. He couldn't imagine what would happen if this was a 100% power Star Destroyer cannon when it hit the arc. Effect. Inside the arc, West District 1, the former site of the Research Institute. The institute has completely disappeared, or to be more precise, the entire West District 1 has disappeared. Kaylan and Ze Lugo began to stack space barriers when the Star Destroyer cannon was charging. Ze Lugo created more than 100 layers of space barriers in a row, wrapping the two of them in them, but when the Star Destroyer cannon was charged, when the Star Cannon arrived, those indestructible space barriers melted away like snow under the scorching Sunday. It wasn't until the last 3 layers of space barriers that the energy reaction of the Star Destroyer cannon completely dissipated. It was almost wiped out. After so many layers of armor were stacked, there were only 3 layers left. Is this the fool's calculation? Kaylan muttered, this is still the electromagnetic pulse bomb. If part of the energy was really emitted at 0.2% power, I would probably be pissed off right now, right? He lowered his head and looked down at the underground ice house. The first to 4th floors of the underground ice house, including the roots of the giant trees entrenched in them, have completely disappeared. Even the deep well leading to the fifth floor has completely disappeared in the aftermath of the Star Destroyer cannon. The fifth floor was directly exposed to K-Ian's field of vision. It was an approximately spherical metal polygon, soaked in a container filled with liquid nitrogen, but now only less than 3/3 of the container was left. In one part, all the liquid nitrogen in it has already evaporated. P.S. Thanks to book friends 202208240318407752, Uziao, and Kinzalo Singh for the 500 starting coins. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Alien Relic Hunter, author, and Chenmi San. Chapter 1063. Kailan glanced at the mobile phone in his hand, and surprisingly found that the call between himself and the intelligence dealer had not been disconnected yet. The interference of the Star Destroyer cannon to the radio was no less than that of the electromagnetic pulse bomb just now. It seemed that this call should have been made with the help of some special means. Thinking back to that time in the bottomless sinkhole, when he was indulged in the dream created by the octopus monster, and the intelligence dealer was able to send emails into the dream, Kailan had already noticed something was wrong. Whether it is an email or a mobile phone, the so-called information carrier may be just a cover-up. Kailan thought for a moment, turned his hand over, took off the back cover, and pulled out the battery. The mobile phone that had lost its power, the screen did not turn off, and the call status was still maintained. Isn't this unnecessary? Kailan threw the phone out with all his strength, then pulled out his pistol and shot the phone into the air. At this time, the voice of the intelligence dealer rang directly in his mind. Hey, when did you discover this? I've noticed problems since I picked up this phone. Judging from the degree of damage to the phone, it can't be turned on at all. These sounds and images are all generated in my brain, but these things are too realistic. It gives people the feeling that it is happening in the real world. Except this time, you also contacted me in this way when you were in the bottomless sinkhole and the ruins of the ancient bronze city, right? Absolutely correct. Ha, cough cough cough. The intelligence dealer's laughter suddenly turned into a cough. In this cough, Kailan could still vaguely hear the soft sound of flesh and blood crawling. Ahem, the fool splits. There is an invisible connection between the four personalities that emerged. With the help of some gadgets produced by Alpha Civilization, we can communicate across space at the level of consciousness. Ahem. You don't seem to be in the right state, Kailan replied with consciousness. Why do you keep coughing? And, since it's communication on a conscious level, why can I hear these coughs? I want to cough out the growths in my respiratory tract, cough cough, but it's a pity that they grow too fast, cough cough. The information dealer said. As for communication at the conscious level, the only way is to receive it. The informant is in a state of pure consciousness, cough, and the user of the device is actually no different from making a phone call, cough cough. Are you overeating? Kailan couldn't help but frown. Almost, according to the progress, I should have broken through the critical point half a year ago. However, I used some methods to suppress the progress of the erosion. Although this method is similar to drinking poison to quench my thirst, ahem, but at least it kept me going. It's time. The information dealer seemed to be very anxious, and he spoke faster and faster. Okay, don't worry about me, act quickly. The space beacon is buried in the wall of the 5th floor of the underground ice house. Kailan jumped in through the opening of the polygonal container. This was not the first time he came to the 5th floor of the underground ice house, but compared to the last time, the changes here were so great that he could not recognize them. After the original Yinglong egg was destroyed, the walls, floors and ceilings of the 5th floor of the underground ice house were all demolished and redone. Safety measures were also greatly strengthened, and the internal space was more than twice as small as before. 4 completely transparent cabinets are neatly placed in the center, but 3 of them have been smashed open and the contents are missing. As for the 4th glass cabinet, it was originally used to store living armor. Of that container. Lugo, can you sense the space beacon? Kaylan turned around and asked. The girl tiptoed and walked around the edge of the ice house, and finally stopped in front of the wall at 1 o'clock. She said to Kaylan, there is an abnormal node in space inside the wall, which should be the space beacon. Open it. The sharp space blade cut through the high-strength alloy cast wall like tofu. When it cut to a depth of more than 2 meters, a black stone box buried in the wall appeared in Ian's field of vision. Middle. Kaylan carefully took out the stone box and opened the lid. What he saw was a rusty bottle cap. There is an obvious indentation in the center of the bottle cap, and there are also signs of deformation on the edge where it was pried by a bottle opener. This thing, is a space beacon, Kaylan couldn't help but ask. Yes, it is the space beacon leading to the new moon. The abnormal space node is attached to this thing, the information dealer and Lugo replied at the same time. Okay. Kaylan nodded and took out the bottle cap. Unfortunately, the paint on the bottle cap had already peeled off, and Kaylan couldn't tell what the bottle originally contained. But that's not important. This thing can teleport itself to the inside of the new moon instantly, which is enough. Lugo must stay here, the intelligence dealer added. The moment the transmission channel opens, there will be very obvious spatial fluctuations. At that time, it is up to her to detonate the annihilation bomb and attract the attention of the undead crew. Ahem, my suggestion is to throw the annihilation bomb directly in the direction of the core area. Don't worry about the aftermath of the explosion. Ahem, the undead crew will definitely find ways to suppress the damage of the annihilation bomb to a minimum. What about you? Kaylan asked again. I still have, other things to do. You can rest assured, before I turn into that kind of monster, I will handle all the aftermath. You don't need to come. Wipe my butt, cough cough cough. I know. Kaylan nodded silently, although he was not sure whether the other party could see his nodding, then turned to Lugo and said, after the space channel is opened, put the annihilation bomb, throw it in the direction of the core area, and then run away as far as possible. Find a place that is secluded enough to hide. When I finish the matter, I will come to you. You're talking about me as if I'm a child with no ability to protect myself, Lugo said expressionlessly. I'm worried about your safety, Kaylan said seriously. In the face of something like the world-destroying tree, your plug-in is not completely invincible. What's more, we just encountered that kind of forbidden person. If there is another enemy with magical powers, what will you do? I know, I will hide myself well, Lugo nodded. Now, do you want to open the transmission channel? Open. Kaylan handed the bottle cap to Lugo. Without further delay, we have already wasted too much time. Lugo held the bottle cap and closed his eyes slightly. Kaylan only felt a slight distortion in the surrounding space. The next second, the entrance to a teleportation channel appeared in front of him. The entrance can only last for a few seconds. Hurry in, Lugo urged softly. I will launch the annihilation bomb as soon as I enter. After Kaylan said this, he jumped directly into the transmission channel. The surrounding scenery began to distort. At first, Kaylan felt as if he had been thrown into a high-speed drum washing machine. His internal organs and the food he had eaten not long ago, whether it was breakfast or lunch, seemed to be about to pass from his throat. It's like throwing it out of your mouth. But gradually, even this feeling of nausea and dizziness disappeared. Ian's consciousness and body seemed to be separated. He seemed to be able to see his body being broken down into the most primitive particles, and these particles were gradually accelerated to close to the speed of light. He also saw that the spaces at both ends of the passage seemed to have been folded countless times, folding the two places that were originally far apart into the front and back of a piece of paper. This was the first time that Kaylan had carried out such a long-distance teleportation in a fully awake state. In the transmission channel, time seemed to have completely stopped. Kaylan felt as if he had been frozen for many years, and even his thinking became a little slow. Just when he began to wonder if there was something wrong with the transmission channel and if he was trapped inside, the exit of the channel suddenly appeared in front of him, wrapping up his body and consciousness. Go in. Boom. Kaylan was spit out from the transmission channel and fell heavily onto a smooth and cold metal floor. Arrive. Kaylan stood up holding onto the floor, rubbed his head, and looked around. This seemed to be a warehouse, but the doors of the metal cabinets placed against the wall were all open, and the interior was empty. He glanced at the mechanical watch on his wrist. The hands were still beating. There were still 8 hours and 7 minutes left in the countdown he had set. In other words, it only took him only a short time to pass through this transmission channel. Less than a minute. Kaylan tapped the ground with his toes, and his whole body slowly floated up. He drew an arc in mid-air and landed a few meters away. Judging from the physical sensation, the gravity of this place was probably that of Alpha Planet. 1/5 of the gravitational force calculated by the astronomers on the arc for the double moon. The moon's gravity is 1/6 that of the Earth, but due to the difference in volume, density, and distance from Alpha Star, the gravity of the double moon is also different from the moon of the old era. As for the moon that originally accompanied the Earth, it was blown up by humans as early as when the Wandering Earth plan started to be implemented. Looks like I'm already inside 2 moons. Kaylan moved toward the end of the room in a half-jumping, half-floating state. Logically speaking, space fortresses like this type, in order to facilitate the daily life of the residents, are usually equipped with gravity simulation devices, especially those that are already skilled in it like the Alpha civilization. For a civilization that has mastered gravity control technology, it is impossible that there would be no such equipment inside Twin Moon Fortress. Kaylan couldn't help but have a bad thought in his heart. Could it be that the energy of the Twin Moon Fortress has been exhausted? I couldn't even turn on a gravity adjustment device. If that were the case, wouldn't the Star Destroyer cannon installed on the Xuanjiao Fortress become a complete decoration? Kaylan moved to one end of the warehouse. There was a door more than 3 meters high. Before Kaylan could reach out, the door seemed to sense Ian's approach and automatically lifted up. There were no lights on in the corridor outside, but when Kaylan walked out of the warehouse, a familiar gravity was suddenly exerted on him, making him relax a little. It seems that the gravity adjustment device was not activated in the warehouse simply because this empty warehouse does not belong to the activity area of the stationed personnel. The device is not turned on, most likely to save unnecessary energy consumption. According to the information dealer, this should be the new moon, right? There were no inscriptions on the walls, ceiling, and floor on both sides of the corridor, and the entire corridor contained very little information. This made Kaylan, who was accustomed to observing the surrounding environment the first step when entering ruins, couldn't help but feel uncomfortable. Through the more information he obtains through observation, the more confident he will be. On the contrary, every step must be taken cautiously. Those risk factors hidden in unknown corners are like shackles on the hunter's hands and feet, dragging him down. Slow down the pace of exploration. But Kaylan doesn't have that much time and energy consumption now. He can't activate the Star Destroyer cannon within 8 hours, and human civilization will come to an end. Xuanjiao Fortress, Xuanjiao Fortress. Kaylan muttered this name silently. As an outer-level Alpha civilization ruins, it is also the only SSS-level ruins. The number 0 SSS-level ruins 2 moons. The exploration degree has always been 0. Apart from knowing that the 2 moons have firepower powerful enough to destroy all approaching aircraft, the Ark civilization knows nothing about the situation inside the Twin Moons. However, from the Nest Master's mouth, Kaylan learned some information about Xuanjiao. After Alpha Star, that is, the Earth of this time and space, settled in the galaxy, the Alpha people wanted to restore the original ecological environment, so they found a way to induce an asteroid to approach Alpha Star 60,000 years ago, and use Alpha. The star's gravity captured it, making it a satellite of Alpha. But later the Alpha people discovered that although this asteroid is about the same size as the Moon, its mass is much greater than the Moon. Therefore, the tides caused by gravity are more violent than the tides of the old era, that can no longer be solved by tides. To describe it, it was simply a catastrophic tsunami. Several Alpha civilization cities built in coastal areas were destroyed, including the ring city that sank into the ground. In order to solve this problem, the Alpha civilization collected a large amount of resources from nearby celestial bodies and built a brand new artificial satellite. A delicate balance was reached between this new satellite and the asteroid, and the gravitational pull between them mutually reciprocated. Checks and balances form a perfect dual satellite system. The asteroid captured by the gravity of Alpha Star was called the Old Moon, and the artificial satellite later built by the Alpha civilization was called the New Moon. As for transforming these two satellites into space fortresses, this is what happened in the next tens of thousands of years. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen San. Chapter 1064. Even the master of the Nest City didn't know what was inside the Old Moon and the New Moon. He only knew that the Twin Moon Fortress was once a powerful weapon prepared by the Alpha civilization to fight against the ability god Familia. In addition to the Star Destroyer cannon, it was also equipped with a large number of strategic weapons, launched from any fortress, are enough to wipe out the human civilization of the Earth in the old era hundreds of times. Kaylan was in a bright corridor and couldn't help but be a little confused about which direction to go in. Except for the door of the warehouse he came out of, there were no signs in the corridor, no street signs, no lighting fixtures, not even the walls, and there is no unblocking between the floor and ceiling. The entire corridor was seamless, as if it were a tunnel carved out of a large metal ingot. "Is there anyone there?" Kaylan tried to shout. No respond. He thought for a while, maybe because the Alpha people didn't understand Chinese, they ignored him, and immediately changed to Alpha language and asked again. "Anyone there?" Suddenly, the lights in the entire corridor lit up. The reason Kaylan had not seen these lights before was because the lamps were all installed inside the wall. Although the wall was made of alloy material, the lamp is designed to be very thin, and the brightness of the lamp itself is very high. The light naturally passes through the wall and shines into the corridor. "Who are you?" a voice asked. Kaylan subconsciously wanted to trace the source of the sound, but found that the sound seemed to come from all directions. What was even more outrageous was that in a narrow and semi-enclosed environment like the corridor, next, this sound actually did not produce an echo effect. At least to Kaylan's ears, the sounds coming from all directions were not sequential in time, and the volume and timbre were completely consistent. They did not look like echoes at all. "Are you the night watchman staying at your Crescent Fortress?" Kaylan asked bluntly. There was not much time left, and he did not have time to go around in circles with the opponent. The top priority was to let the opponent directly activate the Star Destroyer cannon and launch the Alpha Star. The world-destroying tree was blown away. The preparation time for a large weapon like a Star Destroyer cannon is definitely not short. Take Yagonactor as an example. If it is a Star Destroyer cannon with 30% power, the charging time alone will take 5 hours. If the charging efficiency of Crescent Fortress's Star Destroyer cannon is slower than this, then the time left for Kaylan can be said to be very tight. "I'm asking you." The other party's tone was very calm, with no emotion at all. "I am a human from the Ark civilization." Kaylan emphasized his tone. "I am a human who was dragged here by you to another parallel time and space." "No, you are not human." The other party's voice still had no fluctuation. To be honest, Kaylan hated arguing with such an incompetent guy. He said eagerly, "Okay, I will be whatever you say. But, I have something very important. If you are not willing to interview me, then I'll just say it right here. The corrodors on the Ark have successfully caused the Ember Crown mutant No. 194A to germinate. In another 28,915 seconds, Its roots will penetrate into the earth and become one with the earth. The earth in his mouth obviously refers to the Alpha planet. Your purpose is to use the Star Destroyer cannon on the Crescent Fortress to destroy the Ember Crown mutant No. 194A. Since you know everything, why do you still ask about those irrelevant things? Isn't it fun? Kaylan couldn't help but feel angry when he heard the other party tell the purpose of his trip exactly as if reading a script. Wait a minute, I use the official whole process to describe the Tree of Destruction. The countdown is calculated in seconds. Are you an alpha or something else? Kaylan suddenly noticed something was wrong and subconsciously asked. Road. I am the core control hub of Crescent Fortress, codenamed Selene. Sure enough, it's an artificial intelligence program. Kaylan was startled. Then, where are the alphas who stayed at Crescent Fortress? Are they here now? Can I talk to them directly? It's a pity. Although she said regret, Selene's tone was completely devoid of regret. Just 6 minutes ago, the last alpha disappeared from this world. 6 minutes ago, Kaylan lowered his head and glanced at his watch. Isn't that when I was just teleported to Crescent Fortress? This can't be a coincidence, right? It's not a coincidence. You are the direct cause of their disappearance. There is a time and space paradox between Alpha and the humans on the Ark. The only way to avoid this paradox is to have no contact between the two parties. After you were transported, when you arrive at Crescent Fortress, there will inevitably be an intersection between you and the last of these alphas, so the space-time paradox will be triggered again and their existence will be directly erased, Selene replied. However, I remember that the 776th Special Forces team met an Alpha man in the ruins of a planetary engine, and there was a conversation between the two parties. Although the conversation failed, he did not come into contact with these soldiers. He was wiped out by the paradox of time and space. In the end, he died at the hands of soldiers who didn't understand the language. How to explain this? Kaylan asked, confused. What those soldiers saw was not a native alpha, but a pseudo-alpha that was cultivated using biochemical technology and artificially implanted with personality and memory. It was connected through a base and a planetary engine. It was essentially the same as me. It is part of the planetary engine, Selene explained in simple and clear words. What the 776 Special Forces team saw was actually a humanoid intelligent computer. A part of the planetary engine, something like a core mastermind. Kaylan couldn't help but twitch the corner of his mouth. In other words, Alpha and humans from the Ark civilization can never meet each other? That's not right. According to the Hive Master, the fool clearly had contact with the Alpha civilization when he first landed on the Alpha planet. He came into contact with the Alpha civilization, not the Alpha people. Any direct contact, including physical contact and visual contact, will lead to the occurrence of space-time paradoxes, and even the inevitable intersection on the future timeline will also erase the Alpha people existence. The only way that allows two humans in parallel time and space to communicate is to use physical information carriers for indirect communication. However, doing so will still lead to a time and space paradox, but it will be delayed in time. Indirect communication? It means that the Alpha people write the information on a message board, then put the message board in a conspicuous place, and then send out a signal for the fool or other Ark people to find the message board and read the words on it. Information, is this what it means? It's basically close, Selene said, but when the Ark people start reading this message board, it means that the reader and the commenter have an intersection. Even if this intersection is only indirect, it will also cause the commenter to their existence is gradually faded until they are completely erased from this world. Hearing what the other party said, Kaylan couldn't help but have a picture pop up in his mind. An Alpha man left a dense and long text on a stone slab, threw the stone slab in the wilderness, and then launched a firework-like firework into the air. Flare, then escaped. The fool wandering in the wilderness rushed to the location of the stone tablet after discovering the signal flare and discovered the stone tablet. When the fool picked up the stone tablet and began to read the words on it, the body of the alpha man who left the stone tablet began to gradually fade away, until the fool finished reading the entire stone tablet, and the alpha man completely disappeared. This is simply using your life to convey information. Kaylan suddenly understood why he was in the fool's memory fragment. The Alpha civilization aircraft that saved the fool and the others would fall straight out of the sky as if it lost control, and they could not find any bodies from the wreckage of the aircraft. It was not a remotely controlled drone, but the Alpha pilot who piloted it was obliterated by the space-time paradox after completing the mission, and the aircraft that lost its pilot naturally crashed. Without the Alphas, can the Star Destroyer cannon of Crescent Fortress still be activated? At this time, Kaylan had no time to mourn the Alphas who disappeared because of him. After all, this was the fate they chose, and what he had to do was, that is, to preserve the existing Ark civilization, so that the Alpha civilization, and more human civilizations in parallel time and space that he does not know are sacrificed in vain. Yes, Selene replied, but the Star Destroyer cannon needs to be activated manually. After all the personnel stationed in the Crescent Fortress disappear, as the core control hub, I do not have the authority to activate the Star Destroyer cannon. How to obtain this permission? Kaylan suddenly became anxious. The fool may have calculated that the Star Destroyer cannon of Crescent Fortress could destroy the giant tree, but he certainly did not calculate that when the Ark civilization decided to use the power of Crescent Fortress at that time, all remaining Alphas on Crescent Fortress will be wiped out due to the paradox of time and space. A wise man must make a mistake after thinking a lot. But just this mistake will lead to the loss of everything. Selene did not answer, but there was a harsh friction sound in the corridor. The friction sound came from far to near. In less than 5 minutes, a coffin-shaped vehicle with a streamlined shell and 2 conical heads appeared in Kaylan, stopped in front of him, and the cover of the vehicle slid open to one side, revealing the seat placed inside. This means obviously asking Kaylan to lie down. The central control room of Crescent Fortress is in the center of the Earth, 1,700 kilometers away from here. The shuttle can move in the tunnel at 12 times the speed of sound. It can take you to the central control room within 7 minutes, it seems to be. Noticing Ian's hesitant expression, Selene opened her mouth to explain. Anyway, let's go to the central control room first and then think of a solution. Kaylan lay down inside the shuttle. After the cockpit lid was closed, a viscous liquid surged up from under the seat, covering the entire cockpit. The space was completely filled. These fluids, whose properties were very similar to LCL, could even dissolve the air. They penetrated along Ian's ears and nose, squeezing out all the cavities in Ian's ear canals and lungs. Kaylan knew that this liquid was used to resolve the G-force exerted on the passengers when the shuttle was moving at high speed, but the next second, he discovered that these liquids had another effect. A strange current flowed along Ian's ear canal and directly to his brain. As it approached, the internal structure diagram of Crescent Fortress appeared in his mind. At the same time, a young woman who combined the characteristics of Eastern and Western beauties appeared. The image of a woman entered his field of vision. "Are you Selene?" Kaylan opened his mouth, but his throat was already filled with anti-charge fluid, and he couldn't make any sound. Fortunately, this fluid seemed to be a communication channel at the consciousness level. As soon as this idea popped into Ian's head, he could feel that the other party had heard the sentence. "I am Selene." The young woman nodded to Kaylan. Although the Alphas themselves turned into half-tentacled monsters, the AI avatar they designed still looked 100% human, and quite in line with the aesthetics of Earthlings from the old era. At least in Ian's eyes, there are only 3 people who can be more beautiful than Selene's avatar: Zelo, Sophia Soma, and Afterota, the 6th lover of the immortal crew. The shuttle began to accelerate. Although Ian's whole body was wrapped in fluid, he could still feel the strong pushing feeling. A number representing speed appeared on Ian's retina, from 0 to 12 times. At the speed of sound, The shuttle only took 11 seconds. I don't know how the propulsion device of this thing can achieve such a terrifying output power. From the outside, it is obvious that there are only 6 jets the size of a bowl, and these are on both sides. The added up quantities. Has the fool been here? While on the road, Kaylan planned to ask Selene about something related to the fool. No human from the Ark civilization has ever entered the Twin Moon Fortress, and you are the first, Selene answered truthfully. That's right, otherwise the alphas left behind in the fortress would have disappeared long ago. Wait, I came to New Moon, so the alphas on the old moon should still be there, right? Can you find a way to contact them? What I mean is, it's not me who should contact you, you should contact them and tell them tactfully, asking them to use Old Moon's Star Destroyer cannon to bombard the world-destroying tree. This should be possible, right? Kaylan said excitedly, as if he had discovered a new continent. I'm sorry, the communication between the old moon and the new moon has been disconnected for more than 10,000 years. I don't know whether there are still alpha people in the old moon. Huh, okay. Kaylan was a little disappointed. Apart from the alphas left behind at the Twin Moon Fortress, are there any alphas left? Before dragging you to this time and space, there was an escape fleet carrying 1.5 million people that left this space. But after they left, we lost all news about them. P.S. Thanks to young Emperor Fengzi for the 100 starting coins. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, and Chenmi-san. Chapter 1065. They shouldn't be able to escape anywhere, after all, they have all been marked by that existence that cannot be erased, Kaylan said. The alphas who chose to leave do not agree with the plan to bring you to this time and space, but the Night's Watch organization has always followed the principle of the minority obeying the majority. However, the Night's Watch organization will not force any member, since they do not agree with the majority the Night Watchman's plan, then other Night Watchmen will respect their ideas. Without affecting the execution of the main plan, they took away a fleet and part of the resources, and then left this space, Selene said. Are they looking for another way out, Kaylan said, or are they just trying to avoid being obliterated by the time and space paradox? I have no idea. The shuttle passed through a long deceleration channel, and finally stopped completely. The canopy was raised. Kaylan turned over and jumped out before the anti-charge fluid could be drained. The anti-charge fluid remaining on Ian's surface and body was quickly absorbed by his body, and then discharged from his pores like waste. After throwing the sticky ball back into the shuttle's cockpit, he raised his head and began to look at his surroundings. The central control room was dark, with only a few fluorescent lights on the surrounding walls providing a pitiful illumination. However, with Ian's visual ability, he could see clearly even if it was completely dark. The style of this central control room is very similar to that of a Western-style large library, but it is many times larger than any building in the Ark civilization. The surrounding walls are embedded with metal cabinet shelves, with intricate carvings on them. Gorgeous decorative patterns. The pattern style is probably somewhere between Gothic and Baroque. In the blank space between the cabinet shelves, there is a large metal mural framed. Most of the content of the mural describes the construction process of the Double Moon Fortress. Although there are many high-tech elements in the mural, the overall appearance it creates an atmosphere of ancient myths and legends. However, judging by time, the stories described in the murals tens of thousands of years ago are indeed ancient legends. After all, even the Dunhuang murals on Earth are only a few thousand years old. Countless crystal boxes are inserted into the grids of these metal cabinets. With Ian's eyesight, he can see at a glance that these crystal boxes are the highest standard crystal chips. The dots of fluorescence on the walls are from these crystal circuit chips are emitted internally. Except for the lack of a central column, the structure of this central control room is very similar to the control center underground in the bottomless sinkhole. Of course, the area and space of the former are hundreds or even thousands of times larger than the latter. Each of these crystal chips can store a massive amount of data. If the standard hard drive used by Kuroi is used as the unit of measurement, the storage capacity of one crystal chip is approximately equal to about 800 to 1000 hard drives. And in this central control room there are at least more than 20 million such crystal chips displayed on the cabinet shelves. This is the central control room of Crescent Fortress, and the backup database of Alpha Civilization. A faint blue light was projected from the dome, and Seleni's holographic projection emerged in the light. Alpha Civilization once had the alternative plan is to completely abandon their home planet and control the Twin Moon Fortress to escape from this space. For this alternative plan, they spent a lot of resources and time on these two satellites. Then why was the plan cancelled? Kaylan asked. I don't know. This plan was cancelled when I was created. From the beginning to the end, my mission has been to assist the garrison of Crescent Fortress and defend the Earth, which is the Alpha planet you call. Selene said. In that alternative plan, the Twin Moon Fortress would share a super artificial intelligence named Jingwei. However, Jingwei was not ultimately created, and this alternative plan was never implemented. Perhaps the Alpha people found that even if they escaped from this space, they could not escape the control of that existence. Kaylan said, fortunately, those who left only took a fleet with them and did not destroy the Twin Moon Fortress. Take it away too, otherwise there is really nothing you can do about the world-destroying tree now. The residents of Crescent Fortress left some information for you at the last moment. Do you want to check it? Selene said. You have a message for me? Why didn't you tell me earlier? Kaylan was stunned and nodded quickly. Of course I want to read it. For an existence that has been erased due to the paradox of time and space, if something is deliberately left to the person who caused the paradox to occur, that thing will gradually disappear. Even if the being is erased and deceives himself, as long as the two, if there is a substantial connection between them, then the paradox will be activated. If I had told you about the existence of the message just now, the message should have almost disappeared by now. As Selene spoke, she opened a huge holographic screen in mid-air, and dense text quickly scrolled on the screen. Kaylan directly activated Shiting and read the message carefully. The first half of the message was an instruction manual on how to operate the Crescent Fortress Star Destroyer cannon. It can be seen that the night watchmen stationed at the Crescent Fortress have long known about Kaylan. Will come, arrangements have been made in advance. Everything left to us by the Alpha civilization will disappear because of the paradox. So, the stone tablet I touched in the glacier ruins turned into powder. Is this the reason? But, why are the things brought out of those ruins haven't disappeared? Kaylan asked Selene while reading the instruction text of the Star Destroyer cannon. Because those things were not originally intended to be left to you by the Alpha civilization, the legacy they want to leave to the Ark civilization is actually much richer than it is now, but after you set foot on the Alpha planet, these legacies will gradually disappear together with the Alpha civilization. The main culprit for this planet becoming so desolate is actually the humans on the Ark. Is it okay for me to understand this? Kaylan curled his lips, not knowing how to express himself for a moment. Yes. But this is also Alpha civilization's own choice, Selene said. At this time, Kaylan had already finished reading the explanatory text of the Star Destroyer cannon, and as Selene said, as time went by, the text content began to appear a lot of missing and garbled characters, broken paragraphs and sentences, and unclear meanings. Characters began to appear frequently, and Ian's reading suddenly became difficult. Do not give up. I hope there will never be humans, even if it has abandoned us, but you still exist. I still don't believe that we can defeat the gods. But it doesn't mean I don't believe in humans. He is not a god at all, he is just a higher dimensional life form. As long as human civilization can continue, sooner or later, humans will be able to. To him, we are like worms, perhaps, even worse than worms. We are so small. However, the bug has never been completely defeated. No need to mourn for us. At least for me, it's better to be obliterated because of the time and space paradox, than to become his nourishment. Since I was born, I have been suffering from the torture of erosion, those whispers have been lingering in my ears day and night, making me almost crazy, but now, I can finally be free. My mission is finally completed. Thank you. When the message ended, the entire text completely faded and disappeared, and even the stagnant time did not allow it to remain in this world for a moment longer. Kaylan took a deep breath and said to Selene, I am the one who should say thank you to them. Selene did not answer this, and Kaylan knew that it was just an artificial intelligence without emotions. It would only faithfully perform the tasks set in the program, but could not empathize with human emotions. Yes, the emotions between humans, there is no alpha civilization, and there are no alpha people, they are humans, they are us. The planet that the crescent moon overlooks is not alpha, but the mother planet of mankind, Earth. According to the information left by the new moon resident, Kaylan strode to the middle of the central control room, while Selene's projection took 2 steps back and gave up the position to Kaylan. The second blue beam of light projected down from the dome and enveloped Ian's body. Kaylan only felt a slight sting on his skin, as if he was burned by this beam of light. The next moment, he discovered a massive flow of information poured into his brain. The entire Crescent Fortress control system was connected to him at this moment. Even though Kaylan has experienced similar things many times, the flow of information this time was so great that the impact made him lose consciousness for a moment. 2 sticky blood stains slowly came from Ian's nasal cavity. Shedding, in the past few seconds, his brain had actually been destroyed and rebuilt countless times. Fortunately, the body's recovery speed was fast enough, which allowed Ian's consciousness and memory to be preserved. Ian's current state is as if he has woken up from a coma for a long time. However, in this process of destruction and rebirth, his brain has been further developed, and the activity level and number of brain cells have reached that of a normal human being. An unattainable peak. Experts once said that only 1/10 of the human brain has been developed, and the other 9/10 are actually treasures that have not yet been discovered, but now, Kaylan feels that the development progress of his brain has reached at least 100. More than 50%, he felt a sense of comfort that he had never experienced before. The speed of thinking was as if the processor of an old computer was changed from 286 to the current top CPU. Not only could he think more than a dozen times at the same time, work, carry out multi-threaded operations, even the memories sealed by the fool in his brain were all unsealed. In these memories, there is actually very little information related to the fool himself. Most of it is the forbidden knowledge inherited from the Alpha civilization. This knowledge, even if it is leaked a little bit, is enough. Let the human beings who accept it instantly break through the critical point and transform into a corroded corpse. However, Kaylan only showed some mild mutation symptoms in his body, and these symptoms all disappeared within a few seconds, allowing him to change back again. A pure human being. Crescent Fortress main gun, and 2K type star cracking device. Startup, Kaylan said slowly. Hundreds of instructions were sent from his brain at the same time, using the blue light pillar that enveloped him as a carrier, transmitted to the crescent moon inside the fortress control system. The crystal circuit chips on the surrounding wall cabinets suddenly flashed crazily, and the originally dim light like fireflies suddenly brightened, like bright lights lighting up in the dark night, and like the brilliant sea of stars in the vast universe. The entire center, the control room, was suddenly filled with magical colors, and the beautiful scenery also had a touch of shocking majesty. The Crescent Fortress, which has been orbiting Alpha Star No, it should be called Earth now, and has been rotating around the Earth for tens of thousands of years without stopping, has stopped. The opposite old moon seemed to sense Ian's intention and stopped at the other end of the Earth. The tide in the middle sea suddenly turned into huge waves, and the tsunami swept along the coast, smashing the hard rocks into pieces. A huge gap that could be called an abyss appeared on the ice cap of the polar sea. Tens of thousands of square meters of ice caps were torn apart, and thawing seawater rose into the sky. Volcanoes all over the surface also erupted one after another, even extinct volcanoes that had long been considered to be incapable of erupting. The blocked mountain passes were also washed away by the surging magma, and red streams of light rolled down from the surface of the mountain towards the surroundings. Spread. The thick radiation clouds were torn open one after another, and the land that had not been exposed to direct sunlight for tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of years finally saw a dazzling clear light falling from the sky. What is happening on the earth is like two extremes. Since it is the day of destruction, it is like the beginning of the rebirth of all things. A veteran standing on the deck of Yagonactor looked up at the clouds. This gushing sunlight made tears fall from the corners of my eyes. I've never seen real sunlight. The sky on this planet is always that gray color, lifeless. To be precise, there has never been a sunny day on this planet. Even the sun, which provides a steady stream of energy to everything on the planet, can only see a blur of light and shadow through the clouds. But now, the sunlight shining directly on the earth is so dazzling that it stimulates people's tear glands to secrete tears continuously, but those who have lived on this planet for a lifetime are still unwilling to look away. Even if their faces are full of tears, they always keep. He raised his head and stared at the light coming from the clouds. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen-Mi-san. Chapter 1066. What's going on? What happened? Hound reached out to hold the helmet that was tilted on his head and shouted, "Damn it, is the sky about to fall?" Strong gravitational anomalies have been detected in various places on Alpha Star. Wait, double moon has stopped. Layton looked at the information displayed on the console and couldn't help but be stunned. Double moon stopped. The Hound raised his head subconsciously, but from his perspective, he could not see the double moons hanging in orbit hundreds of thousands of kilometers away from Alpha Star. Although the radiation clouds were covered by the double moons, the moon's gravity tore it apart, but it was daytime where the battlefield was, and strong sunlight poured down from the sky, making the blurry outlines of the twin moons disappear directly into the strong light. Kaylan, isn't that kid up there?" Hound murmured to himself as he looked at the moon that was completely invisible. "Are you kidding? Could your dog nose still be able to smell Ian's scent from hundreds of thousands of kilometers away?" Layton couldn't help complaining, "I'm a little worried. Could this be an immortal crew member? There will be a backup plan left behind." Before Layton could finish his words, Ian's voice rang in the control room. "This time I really made the old dog guess right. I am now inside the Crescent Fortress." "What?" Layton opened his mouth for a moment, and was stunned for several seconds before continuing, "Didn't the communication between you and Yagonactor be—" No, you are in Chuanjiao now. The shielding field on the Ark will definitely not be able to cover you." "Wait a minute. Didn't you sneak into the inside of the Ark? Why did you end up on the moon again?" "Direct space teleportation," Kaylan replied briefly. "I asked you to fire just now to help me clear the way." "What are you doing on the moon?" the Hound asked quickly. "I got a piece of news from a reliable source. The Tree of Destruction, which is the giant tree in front of you, has a physical strength that far exceeds our estimated value. It relies on annihilation bombs and a Gonactor's Star Destroyer. Even the cannons cannot destroy it. The only way is to activate the full-power Star Destroyer cannon on the Twin Moon Fortress and penetrate the Sol with one shot." Full-power Star Destroyer cannon. Hound immediately grasped the key point of this passage. Will it destroy the entire Alpha Star? "Although it is full power, I only need to charge it to about 20% before it can be put into use, which is enough to complete a precise strike on the Tree of Destruction without causing more additional damage," Kaylan replied. 20% charging? How long will it take?" Hound asked again. 4 hours. Kaylan. Many of the monsters that have attacked us before emerged from the canopy of the giant tree. No, there are more this time. It is conservatively estimated to be more than 100 million. They are breaking through the atmosphere of Alpha Star. The target direction is Crescent Moon. Layton suddenly asked urgently, how is the defense facilities of Crescent Fortress? Most of the energy of Crescent Fortress is supplied to the Star Destroyer cannon, and its own defensive firepower has now dropped to the lowest level. Kaylan said, I'm not sure if I can block these things. What Kaylan said is the truth. Crescent Fortress has not received energy replenishment from the outside for tens of thousands of years. It only relies on the light and heat radiation absorbed from the sun, which can only meet the operational needs of the fortress itself, and there is a big energy gap. In fact, the fortress's energy reserves have already reached the bottom like Yagonactor. Fortunately, a skinny camel is bigger than a horse after all. The remaining energy of the Crescent Fortress is enough to charge the Star Destroyer cannon to 25%, but during this charging process, the fortress's own more than 90% of the defense facilities will be cut off from energy supply, and the terrifying firepower that was enough to annihilate a full fleet in 1 minute will no longer exist. Hold on, reinforcements are coming soon. After the Hound said this, he immediately turned to Layton, move the Yagonactor. We have to intercept those monsters before they fly to the new moon. Also, we have to stop them before they fly to the new moon. Inform Alexander and Maginot and ask them to send all the vehicles that can go into space. Also, ask the ground troops to evacuate quickly, so as not to be hit by the aftermath of the Star Destroyer cannon. You don't have to say it. I've already informed you. Layton was already busy turning into a top. Fortunately, his robotic arm has recently undergone a special transformation. The main arm can be split into 6 auxiliary arms. At the same time, after performing 3 operations and adding the native arm, one operation instruction after another was accurately input into the system. Dozens of holographic projection screens surrounding him flashed various parameters rapidly, accompanied by a slight vibrated Yagonactor, which was originally suspended in the sky, slowly raised the bow of the ship and pointed diagonally into space. Stand still, we're going to speed up, Layton said in a deep voice. The Hound immediately sat back on his seat and pulled on his seat belt. The next second, a slight tremor was transmitted from the stern of the ship. The tail of the teardrop-shaped giant ship lifted off countless covers with a single area larger than a football field. Under each cover was a huge jetport, from which blazing white flames shot out, converging into a thousands-meter-long line. The long tail flame pushed the giant ship towards the sky, gradually accelerating. The teardrop-shaped giant ship quickly pierced through the thick radiation clouds. The higher you go up, the darker the surrounding colors. The sky gradually changes from dark blue to black, and the celestial objects that were originally obscured by the sun also appear one by one. Now in sight. The Hound could already see the new moon on the screen. At this time, there was a gap in the center of the crescent star. It looked like a gap from a distance, but it was actually a gap hundreds of kilometers long and more than 10 kilometers long. Wide canyon. The scene inside the canyon cannot be seen clearly from the screen, but Yagonakota's sensor marked it with an eye-catching big red block near the center of the canyon, accompanied by the words high energy response was constantly beating, and the entire edge of the screen was flashing a warning red light. Old dog, the situation is not good. Layton turned his head, with a very obvious look of hesitation on his face. What's wrong? Hound frowned. The control and communication of Yagonactor are all handed over to Layton. The console of the super battleship needs to process too much information at the same time, except for people like Kaylan. In addition to this kind of alien that can directly connect the consciousness to the console, it is either equipped with a group of crew members who perform their own duties, or it is operated by modified people like Layton who have installed the newly developed brain-computer interface. The information was directly transmitted to Layton's brain, and the Hound standing aside could not see these things intuitively. It's not good, the Scatty's speed is not as fast as ours, and it can't keep up with Yagonactor's speed. It will take them at least half an hour to reach the designated blocking point. Moreover, the Skytie's many fighter jets and mechas are not capable of space combat, and less than one-third of the number of aircraft that can be used in blocking battles. The worst news comes from ground forces. Hound, what happened to the ground troops? The ground troops were planning to withdraw from the battlefield, but many monsters emerged from the ground and attacked them. These monsters were not strong individually and did not cause serious losses to the ground troops, but they were very difficult to deal with. I'm afraid that all the ground troops will not be able to withdraw from the battlefield within 4 hours. After finishing speaking, Layton sighed. The Hound immediately asked Layton to bring up the drone footage that was monitoring the battlefield. He saw many crypts appearing around the ground troops' positions, and countless beetle-type creatures emerged from these crypts, covering the entire ground troops. The formation was cut into pieces, instantly shattering the ground troops' plan to withdraw from the battlefield in an orderly manner. Since the warships and fighter jets in the sky had already left the Ark airspace and rushed to the space battlefield, the ground troops did not receive air support at this time, and they were suddenly trapped in a situation of fighting on their own. The purpose of these bugs is to hold back the ground troops so that Kaylan can use the rat weapon. The hunting dog said bitterly, "Damn, it's such a dirty trick. It's true that those beasts from the Undead Crew Association can come up with it. Idea. But this kind of technique is completely useless for people as cold as the Undead Crew Ghost Owl, who had been standing nearby and said little, said, although he is not a member of the God Hunting group, but after everyone went through life and death together, Hound and others had already regarded him as one of their own. You haven't had much contact with Kaylan, and you don't know him well enough." Hound shook his head. Kaylan is different from those in the Undead Crew. Although the number of ground troops is not large, the total number of them is almost 100,000. Under the bombardment of the Star Destroyer cannon with 20% power, not only the entire Ark will be evaporated, but also the entire Ark will be evaporated. 100,000 people will not be spared either, not even their ashes will be left. For the continuation of a civilization, the sacrifice of 100,000 people is not a heavy price. The war within mankind kills far more people than this number. If you compare this to a business, it can be described as a fortune. But this kind of thing cannot be measured by simple stakes. A person who can use his life as a bargaining chip and easily sacrifice 100,000 people, his humanity will be destroyed in such transactions again and again. It gradually wears away and eventually turns into a cold-blooded thing like a machine, devoid of any emotion and so rational that it is almost cruel. The Undead Crew will believe that leading humans requires absolute rationality, and human nature is dispensable, but the irony is that among the few characteristics humans possess, human nature is the one that is most effective in resisting erosion. The power of. It doesn't matter whether a person who has lost his humanity can still be called a human being, but such a guy is often the first to fall when faced with the erosion of consciousness. Strong emotions can easily make people become extreme, while absolute reason can make people fall into the endless abyss. Compared with the power of erosion, human reason is too insignificant, like a road made of yellow sand. The dam will collapse as soon as it rushes. Only the brilliance of humanity can resist the rolling darkness. It was precisely because of this discovery that the fool created Kaylan and entrusted his last hope to him. Kaylan will not sacrifice these 100,000 people easily. This is not a woman's kindness, but a kind of reverence for life and human beings themselves. If in his heart, people can be sacrificed casually if he loses the props, those dangerous thoughts that have been dormant in his head will instantly break out of the cage, distorting and subverting his cognition. At that point, he really can't be considered a person anymore. Inform the Skytie and let them return to the atmosphere. Let all the fighters and mechas that cannot go into space replenish their ammunition and fuel and stay to support the ground forces. After ensuring that the ground forces are completely evacuated from the battlefield, they can then participate in the blocking operations. The Hound thought for a moment and gave the order with some difficulty. Then don't we have to fight alone? Layton said with a look of embarrassment. Agunakota's energy reserves have been almost exhausted. Old dog, you have to think clearly. Hurry up and pass on the order. It will be too late later, the hound said angrily. If you fight alone, you will fight alone. This is not the first time. What's wrong? Are you afraid? I'm afraid of you. I'm afraid that your old bones won't be able to withstand it, and you will be folded in space and won't even be able to recover your body, Leighton cursed, but he still kept the hound in his hands honestly. The order was conveyed. Isn't that good? Hound glared at Leighton fiercely and choked in a curse-like tone. What a fart, I can't even be buried in the ground after I die, I'm floating in the universe like a lonely ghost. According to you, all the people who died before 900 years ago in the new era are wild ghosts. Hound raised his foot and kicked Leighton on the butt, as if he had practiced it hundreds of times. Besides, this Earth is not our Earth, and I have no nostalgia for it. Okay, the Skatai is going to support the ground troops. Leighton frowned. As for us, we will arrive at the blocking location in 6 minutes. This will be a hard battle. Everyone, be prepared. Is there any battle along the way that hasn't been a tough one? Ivan laughed out loud, picked up the wine bottle, raised his head and took another swig. That's right, Leighton nodded, it's now, and I'm still scared. Zwilligito said nothing, but pulled up his sleeve and wiped the blade of his usual axe vigorously. The blocking location selected by Yagonactor is between Crescent Moon and Alpha Star, about 270,000 kilometers away from the surface. This place can just cut off the route of the monster group to Crescent Moon. Yagonactor relied on his superior mobility to go directly to the front of the monster group, directly crossing the opponent's path. P.S. Thanks to Tuquishin for the 520 starting coins. Gen, this guy's ID is so weird, I searched through it for a long time before I found these words. I should have copied and pasted it earlier. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Enchenmi-san. Chapter 1067. The wave of energy previously charged with antimatter had very little left after firing an electromagnetic pulse bomb and a 0.13% power star destroyer cannon. It could support Yagonactor to break through the atmosphere and orbit around. It's already very difficult in front of the monster group, let alone activating other weapons on the battleship. As for the weapon platforms built on the surface of Yagonactor, they have been completely lost in the 2 previous battles. There are less than 100 anti-aircraft turrets, defensive positions, and various bunkers that can still be used. They were all completely destroyed. Chi Hanfan looked at the messy outer deck and the soldiers wearing outer space combat uniforms around him, and a word came to his mind, the end of the strong crossbow. Yes, the current Yagonactor is the end of a strong crossbow, not to mention the monster swarm at this level. Even the 2 previous waves of bugs may not be able to stop it. 2 operators from the engineering department are adding heavy external armor to the Blasphemer mecha. The stacked layers of alloy blocks make the Blasphemer look like a steel demon that is both retro and technological. The 2 styles that should have been in conflict with each other have been perfectly integrated on the body, showing a strange sense of harmony. Have you checked the fuel of the thrusters? Chi Hanfan patted the rocket thrusters installed on the outside of the leg armor. The Blasphemer mecha wanted to maintain high maneuverability in the gravity-free space environment. These shapes the kettle-like propeller is crucial. Everything has been checked. The fuel is full, and the sealing of the storage tanks is okay. An officer from the engineering department said to Chi Hanfan, But what? Chi Hanfan looked at the engineering department officer and asked. Hantio, you also know that although the series of thrusters is fast, it consumes fuel very quickly, and when fighting in a space environment, the thrusters basically operate without interruption. The 6 main thrusters can sustain for 15 minutes, and the combat radius of the Blasphemer mecha cannot exceed 5 kilometers beyond the deck, otherwise, it is very likely that it will never be able to return. Did you hear that? The combat radius is controlled within 5 kilometers. If the fuel reserve drops to half, return to the hangar immediately to replenish it. Don't be reluctant to fight. Chi Hanfan knocked hard on the cockpit hatch and said loudly. Got it. Valentina's muffled voice came from the cockpit. Leighton wanted to stay and control the Yagonak Torban ship. Except for him, everyone in the central control room, including Zofia, had put on their equipment and was ready to fight off the ship. 2 minutes left. Leighton glanced at the countdown in the upper right corner of the main screen, and on the other two screens, a group of monsters were rapidly approaching from far to near. No, maybe it shouldn't be called a group of monsters now. These monsters have now turned into various fighter jets and flying mechas, and among the many mechas, there are even a few ships that are riddled with holes, but the main body is guarding them. A battleship with a very complete structure. What the hell are these things? The corner of the Hound's eye twitched sharply. This kind of mimicry ability, damn it, when will the undead crew thoroughly study those things? They extracted genetic samples from the red tide on Leviathan and combined these samples with the mimetic fungi we discovered in the wilderness to create this creature between animals and fungi. Ian's voice sounded inside the ship again. They can simulate anything they come into contact with. As long as the energy is enough, they can even use plasma main guns or even star destroyer cannons. Damn it, if I had known that we should have destroyed those samples of mimic fungi on the spot instead of handing them over to those bastards. Aren't you asking for your own trouble? The Hound stomped the floor angrily. Okay, old dog, it's too late for you to say anything now. Leighton turned around and said, but you can rest assured for now, there is still a big gap between the simulated fleet and the real thing. I use Yagonactor's detector focused on checking the warships in the center. They were all just superficial things. Their internal energy reactions were not enough to fire plasma cannons. At most, they could be bombarded with secondary cannons. A few shots, and then the battleship will disintegrate on its own. I think this battleship must be at least the heavy cruiser level, right? The secondary guns of the heavy cruiser level, that's pretty easy to say, Hound said through gritted teeth. It's better than facing a real fleet. Leighton sighed. If the main guns of these battleships can be used, not too many, and each ship can fire one gun, we will be completely defeated in this blocking battle. No need to fight. Okay, don't explain anything to me. Even if this thing is a real thing, I have to tear it alive today. The Hound raised the weapon in his hand. He was wearing the set of armor was brought from the undersea city. Although the living computer named Christine has evil intentions, the equipment given is indeed good. If the warriors on the Yagonactor ship can manpower with one set, the pressure of this blocking battle will be reduced a lot. Unfortunately, there is no if. Have you written the suicide note? The Hound looked around and asked loudly. Although we may not be able to go back alive today, I can guarantee that Yagonactor will never sink. What else do you have in the end? If you want to leave any words or things for your loved ones, just put them here. Last words. What other last words can there be? A soldier from Fleet Zero, whose bandages and plasters had not yet been removed from his arm, laughed. If we lose this battle, how will we have any relatives? If you really have anything to say, you can go underground and say it face to face. If we win, then we can directly tell future generations that I am a humming hero to save the world. Yes. I am the humming savior hero, another soldier also shouted. Suddenly, everyone shouted loudly, raising their arms high above their heads one after another. Well said, we are all humming heroes. Heroes who save the world. Hound clenched his fist and waved it vigorously. If you are not afraid of death, come with me. Troops one after another completed their assembly on the school grounds in front of the base, and then headed to the outer deck of Yagonacota through the transmission channel. There were about 1.5 people left in the Yagonacota ship. 10,000 people, of which there are only about 2,000 actual combat troops, but now, there are as many as 10,000 man phalanxes waiting in front of the transmission channel. Whether they are cotters of the engineering department or logistics personnel, whether they are staff officers, clerks, or foremen, these people who usually hold wrenches, electronic pens, and spatulas are now armed with weapons, and their bodies are bursting with energy. The morale is actually no less than that of an elite regular combat force. Only the minimum level of logistics support personnel remains on the ship, responsible for monitoring the battlefield, transmitting communications, and providing supplies, repairs, and medical assistance to the troops who have withdrawn from the front line. Everyone else who can be spared has been distributed with space combat uniforms and weapons. In just a few minutes, the Hounds were able to gather an army of more than 10,000 people. In addition to these more than 10,000 people, there is also a secret force that was also liberated from the freezer by the Hounds. This force is not large in number, with only more than 80 mechas in total, but these more than 80 mechas are all improved mass-produced fallen angels, and the living CPUs installed inside are the consciousnesses of ace pilots who died in battle collected from the battlefield during this period. The codename of this force among the survivors is the undead who have returned from hell. These people, how many of them can survive until the end of the war? Chi Hanfan shook his head imperceptibly, and turned over and jumped onto his own body. His body is not a combat mecha, but an engineering mecha modified from an old-fashioned walker. The places where weapons were originally installed have been replaced with multifunctional robotic arms, acetylene cutters, and welding guns. The back of the body, the huge metal cabinet, is filled with universal model replacement parts. As one of the directors of the engineering department of the Hunting God Hunting Group, Chi Hanfan's task is to urgently repair the damaged airframes on the front line of the battle so that they can return to the battlefield as soon as possible. The armor of this old-fashioned walker is so little that it can be said to be almost non-existent. In order to distribute the load to the repair tools and parts cabinet, the shell of the body has been thinned by 1/2. Let alone conventional mecha weapons, even if it is an infantry, the half-inch caliber anti-materiel weapons used can easily penetrate the cockpit of this aircraft. But Chi Hanfan didn't care. He stepped on the accelerator pedal hard, holding the steering column tightly with his left hand, and twisting a large knob above his head with his right hand, constantly adjusting the balance of the machine. This machine was a few days old. It was just rushed out recently. To put it bluntly, it moved a mobile working platform from the engineering department to an old-fashioned walker. This was the first time it participated in actual combat. If the Hound could see the situation in the cockpit of this aircraft at this time, he would be surprised to find that Chi Hanfan's hands had become extremely stable, with no sign of trembling. "It's time for us to go out too, Hound." Asano Akira, Joe and others looked at each other, but Ivan seemed to have received some message at this time. He took out the communication terminal from his pocket and took a quick look. He said to the Hound, "Old dog, I still have some important things to do. You go up first and I will be back soon." "Okay, I understand, you go ahead." Hound didn't ask Ivan what the important thing was. After getting along with him for so long, he knew very well what kind of person Ivan was. He couldn't escape from the battle because he was greedy for life and afraid of death. He also clearly distinguished the priorities of various things. Since Ivan said it was an important matter, the priority must be above blocking those monsters from forming a fleet. "Hold on, you have to hold on for at least 15 minutes. Ivan said these words with some unclear meaning, then turned around and ran towards the building where the infirmary was located. 15 minutes? Why 15 minutes? Hound was stunned. The charging time of the Crescent Fortress Star Destroyer cannon was 4 hours. The difference between 15 minutes and 4 hours was really far. "Forget it, let's forget about it for now." The Hound checked the weapons and ammunition, gestured to the people behind him, and then resolutely jumped into the transmission channel. "Yagonactor, outer deck, first blocking position." All soldiers participating in the blocking operations were issued space combat uniforms. They relied on the magnetic devices included in the boots of the space suits to stand firmly on the deck, waiting for the enemy to approach. It is said to be a space combat suit, but it is actually a space suit for extravehicular operations with tactical equipment. In addition to isolating radiation and providing oxygen, This spacesuit does not have any armor or any external propellers. It only has a compressed air injection device that can slightly adjust the posture and provide a small amount of thrust in a gravity-free environment, and the compressed air reserve of this device is not large. This results in these soldiers can only fight on the outer deck. Once they leave the deck, they are basically it is equivalent to losing all mobility and can only become a living target floating slowly in mid-air. The only ones that can fight off the deck are tactical mechas and carrier-based aircraft, but their combat radius is only a few kilometers. For fleet battles, this combat radius is almost negligible. Old dog, I'm worried about one thing, Chi Hanfan said in the internal communication channel. What if those monsters only send part of their troops to deal with us, and the remaining large forces will directly bypass Yagonactor, heading straight for New Moon? Then we won't have any energy left to pursue. Don't worry, Yagonactor is the ark of the future of mankind. The undead crew will be eager to sink it here. Even if the opponent divides their forces, at least half of their combat power will be left, which can help Kalen reduce his stress. With half the pressure, this is already a good result. Everyone be on alert. The first wave of attacks is coming. Hit the ship in 5 seconds. Layton's low roar sounded in the headphones, and Hound and Chi Hanfan raised their heads at the same time and looked upward. The fleet formed by the giant tree monsters has not yet arrived, but the long-range attack artillery fire has already landed on the outer deck of Yagonactor. A solid light curtain instantly lit up, blocking all these artillery fires. Layton, how is the energy shield loss? Can it withstand it? After 3 rounds of artillery fire, the opponent's long-range attacks temporarily came to an end, and Yagonactor's energy shield also became dimmer. If the firepower is always at this frequency, the shield generator should be able to turn around on its own. I'm afraid that when the opponent gets closer, he starts to launch a suicidal charge. At that time, the energy shield may not be able to block it, Layton said worriedly. Don't worry, let us deal with those who rush in, as long as you can help us block the artillery of those warships. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Enchenmi-san. Chapter 1068. After 3 rounds of bombardment, the monster fleet had already approached Yagonactor. Just as Chi Hanfan expected, the opponent's troops were divided into 2 groups, and about half of the combat force bypassed Yagonactor. Heading straight towards the New Moon, the remaining half crashed into Yagonactor's energy shield. Layton. Open the shield for 5 seconds, let a group in, and then close the door to beat the dogs, Hound shouted loudly in the team channel. Received. Yagonactor's energy shield flashed twice and suddenly disappeared. A 200-meter-long light battleship and thousands of fighter jets and flying mechas suddenly approached Yagona. But Thor's outer deck didn't wait 5 seconds before the energy shield was restored again, blocking subsequent enemies. These guys are too fast, Layton said in the communication channel. It has only been open for 2 seconds, and the number of enemies rushing in is already more than 3 times the budget. Stop talking nonsense. The Hound has jumped up and moved to a position suitable for output with the help of thrusters. Its arms and the 4 mechanical arms behind it have a total of 6 weapons, pouring out firepower at the same time. Although these monsters simulate the appearance of battleships and fighter jets, their defensive power is obviously incomparable to real battleships. Even individual small weapons can easily penetrate their external armor. No, that thing it shouldn't be called armor, it should be called armor-shaped structure. But in this way, the weaknesses of these battleships and fighter jets, such as cockpits, engines, etc., will no longer exist. Unless they are torn apart with intensive firepower and the main structure is destroyed to pieces, it will be considered a hit. Those vital points can't be knocked down either. Concentrate your firepower. Attack that battleship first, the Hound shouted loudly while outputting. Don't let it hit it directly. All the turrets on the deck of Yagonactor turned their guns towards the white light battleship, and the dense barrage almost turned the battleship into a sieve. Valentina took the lead in controlling the blasphemer mecha, jumped directly onto the battleship, put the large caliber cannon against the outer armor of the battleship and fired. The 30mm caliber shells were poured directly into the interior of the battleship, and then penetrate from the other side. Valentina fired the entire magazine box in one go and successfully tore a huge crack near the bow of the ship. The remaining connection between the battleship's bow and the hull behind could not withstand the huge force, and was immediately torn apart. The bow flew to one side, and the hull was swayed in mid-air. It fell on the deck of Yagonactor and swept a beached whale flat like a sand sculpture on the beach, destroying the bases of 4 turrets without any hindrance. Fortunately, these forts had been scrapped before. The falling battleship did not cause too many casualties, and Yagonactor's firepower was not weakened much. Compared with hitting it head-on while accelerating, the impact force generated by falling from mid-air after hitting it sideways has been weakened a lot. "Good fight," the Hound shouted excitedly. "Everyone, divide the battlefield and defeat the enemies that come in. Their individual strength is not strong. This battle can be fought, and it can be fought." But as soon as these words were spoken, huge changes occurred on the battlefield. In the next second, the downed warship disintegrated in just a few seconds, but the decomposed parts turned into individual pieces. Independent individuals transformed into various tactical mechas and rushed towards the human defense line. "Damn, why is it happening like this?" The Hound was stunned for half a second, and immediately modified the order. "Everyone, shrink the front line. Block the gap in the position. Don't let these things break through." The Hounds suspended in mid-air could see clearly that the combat strategy of these monsters was simple, but also crude and effective. It was to use their own changes to catch humans off guard, use high mobility to penetrate the battlefield, and then hide behind bunkers. Human troops surrounded them and chipped away at them bit by bit. Originally, the Hound planned to have the soldiers separate the monsters that landed on the deck and defeat them one by one. However, he did not expect that this tactic would be used first by these monsters. To deal with this style of play, the safest way is to concentrate the troops in one place and form a defensive formation like an iron barrel. As long as the enemy's initial wave of fierce offensive can be withstood, the balance of victory will gradually move towards they lean. But the Hound ignored one thing. The battlefield was in space at this time, not on the ground. The speed of the soldiers' movement was greatly affected. In addition, most of these soldiers had never experienced zero gravity. During the training in the environment, many people who made operational mistakes floated into the air. The monsters were already in disarray when they rushed closer. The shortcomings in the quality of the combatants were finally exposed. Hound also knew very well that morale was important, but it was difficult to win the battle with only enthusiasm. There are also those remaining forts, which are scattered throughout the deck. At this time, there is no way to divide the troops to protect these forts. The troops in the bunkers suddenly fell into a situation of fighting on their own. "Let the undead troops dispatch," the Hound gritted his teeth. "No matter what, let's get over the current crisis first." After receiving the order, the mass-produced fallen angel, painted entirely in black, immediately entered the battlefield. Although there are only 84 mass-produced fallen angels, the combat effectiveness of each one is astonishingly strong. The tactical mechas transformed from those monsters cannot even stand in front of them. Looking down from above the battlefield, the undead army was like a black dagger inserted straight behind the pale wave. Wherever the black dagger touched, those pale bodies seemed to be struck by a sickle. No, they should be crushed by a combine harvester. Like wheat, they fell one after another. After the mechas turned into single monsters were torn apart, they no longer had the ability to rebirth. Under the desperate battle of the undead troops, the originally precarious situation was finally temporarily stabilized. The most important trump card in your hand has just been knocked away. "What are you going to do with the next few waves of attacks?" Chi Hanfan asked Hound. "Do I have a choice? If I can't even withstand the first wave of offensive, what's going to happen next?" Hound said angrily. "Damn it, If I had known better, I shouldn't have let this battleship in. A battleship the number of split cells is dozens of times greater than the group of minions defending it. Everywhere on the outer deck of Yagonactor was already engaged in a bitter battle. Fortunately, the undead troops not only withstood the enemy's front line, but also killed through the entire queue. As time went by, the number of enemies who landed on the deck increased. It is decreasing rapidly, and although the casualties on the human side are a bit higher than expected, the excess is not too much and is still within an acceptable range. The Hound fell back to the ground. The engineering mecha driven by Chi Hanfan immediately slid behind him. 4 fuel guns replenished the Hound's propellers at the same time, and the 2 mechanical arms methodically moved the guns that had been deformed due to overheating. The tube was replaced. 2 anti-aircraft turrets were lost, and the casualties of the conventional troops were about 700. Counting the personnel who escorted the wounded back to the ship, nearly 1,000 people were unable to participate in the next wave of battles. As for the undead troops, they were lost among the 9 mass-produced fallen angels. In addition to these 9 destroyed units, there are also 11 living CPUs that burned out prematurely due to overload. There are only 64 units left that can still fight. Chi Hanfan was supplying supplies while reporting the data just calculated to the Hound. It's pretty much the same as my visual estimate. According to this loss ratio, we still have a lot of fighting to do. Even if we can't win, we still have to at least drag these enemies here and not let them pass. The Hound turned his head and looked. A glance at the direction of the new moon showed that the enemies that had bypassed Yagonactor had already gone far away. Only some inconspicuous white dots could be seen with the naked eye. In another 10 minutes, they would arrive at the new moon. Over the sky. Hound didn't know how much of Crescent Moon's defense power was left. All he could do was hold back as many enemies as possible and reduce the pressure on Crescent Fortress to the greatest extent. "Old dog, the situation is not good," Layton's cry suddenly came from the earphones. "The enemies outside have increased the frequency of attacks, and the energy shield is about to be unable to hold up. I must let in another group, otherwise once the shield generator is overloaded, the energy shield will disappear for at least 10 minutes. "Damn, got it, let them in." Hound threw the 2 scrapped rail machine guns in his hands to Chi Hanfan, took out a dozen individual missiles from the arms box attached to the deck, and rushed in again. Entered the battlefield. A few seconds later, the energy shield covering Yagonactor disappeared again. This time, the number of battleships rushing in increased to 4. Valentina tried her best to disintegrate 2 battleships, and the remaining 2 were replaced by more than a dozen mass-produced fallen angels. However, the disintegration of the battleships was not the end. Thousands of them were produced after the disintegration. The most troublesome part is the independent individual of the plan. There are bugs, beasts, humans, mechas, and even the shapes of mass-produced fallen angels and seeds of erosion. Those independent individuals separated from the battleship began to deform as soon as they landed on the deck. They were like a piece of living clay. It was molded into various things by a pair of invisible hands. The Hound's propeller fuel soon ran out again. This time, Chi Hanfan was busy repairing several aircraft that had retreated from the front line, and there was no time to replenish him. The Hound could only fall back to the deck and fight with the ones that rushed up. Monsters and mechas engage in close combat. The Hound couldn't remember how long he had been fighting. Although this power armor could save the wearer's physical energy to the greatest extent, in such a fierce fight, the Hound's physical strength was still overdrawn many times, each time relying on injections. The medicine forced him to get over it. As his physical exhaustion became more and more severe, the medicine he chose to inject became more and more powerful. Gradually, the Hound felt that his eyes seemed to be unable to see clearly, and other people in the earphones the voice also became very blurry, as if coming from a very far away place. He could only hear his own heavy breathing and drum-like heartbeat, but nothing else could be heard clearly. He instinctively waved the weapon in his hand. The chainsaw of the chainsword had broken. He simply used the heavy sword as a blunt instrument, hitting it left and right. The hound didn't feel like he was controlling the power armor. Instead, the power armor drives his body to complete various actions. At first, there was still a feeling of soreness in the muscles, but now, he could feel nothing. Even the pain of the needle piercing the skin when injecting the medicine disappeared. The only feeling was a burning heat flowing along the blood vessels and muscles spread throughout the body. The drugs were squeezing out every drop of potential in the body and overdrawing his remaining vitality. Another horizontal slash, but this time it failed to knock the enemy away. The hound took a closer look and saw that the person blocking his attack was a pale giant more than 8 meters tall. It was holding onto the chainsaw with one hand. With his chainsword, and punched out with the other hand, knocking the hound to the ground with both human and armor. What the hell is this? Is it a fusion of multiple individuals, an elite monster? The hilt of the chainsword was still firmly held in the hound's hand, but the blade had been broken off by the opponent and thrown far away. The white giant bent down, grabbed the hound's shoulders with both hands, lifted it up, and then slammed it to the ground. Bang! Logically speaking, sound should not be transmitted in a vacuum, but the hound clearly heard a loud noise, and then there was a buzzing sound in his ears. Something sticky flowed out of the ear canal, and the smell of blood filled the inside of the helmet. His nose twitched twice, but he found that blood was not just flowing out of his ears, but also his nasal cavity and eye sockets. Blood was pouring out from the edges of his body, and there was a salty smell in his throat, as if it would splash out from his mouth at any time. This old bone, finally has to explain, "Damn, Leighton, you have to give me, good command, the next." Before the hound finished speaking his last words, the pale giant in front of him had already flown out. Only a few irregular-shaped alloy pillars penetrated its body, nailing it to Yagonak. Thor's deck. What? The hound turned his head with some difficulty. He saw an ironkin coming from behind. This ironkin was wrapped in a strange-looking heavy armor. This heavy armor looked like a pile of the metal scraps were kneaded together and shaped into the same shape. As for the part above the neck, there is no protection, leaving the head exposed. No, it was not a human head, but a skeleton with completely stripped of flesh and blood. 2 points of red firelight flickered in the black eye sockets of the skeleton. What the hell? The next second, the heavily armored skeleton stretched out his hand and pulled the half-dead hound up from the ground. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen-Mi-san. Chapter 1069. Who are you? Hound asked in shock. The other party seemed to be on his side, but Hound had no idea that there was such a character in his camp. He is 33. Yvonne answered the Hound's question on the communication channel. 33's ability to manipulate nano-alloy comes from an alien god. It just so happened that the ownerless people that Kaylan carried out from the Tower of Babel, there is a part of the energy that has the same origin as this power god. With the idea of treating a dead horse as a living horse doctor, I injected a very small amount of the power god's energy into 33's body. And then it became like this. No, his body was directly destroyed by the strong energy conflict, but for some reason, his consciousness was preserved. His current body was rebuilt on its own with nano-alloy after controlling the energy of the alien god. Plastic Yvonne said. Another group of monsters rushed up, but the next second, the decks under their feet suddenly began to change. These decks seemed to come alive, surging up, wrapping up the monsters that stepped on them, and then it contracted violently inward, directly squeezing the monster's body. The entire outer deck of Yagonactor is made of nano-alloy. This is 33's main battlefield, Yvonne said. With him here, our chances of winning will be greatly improved. Then 33 is like this now. Is it considered dead or alive? The hound glanced at the two fascinating lights in the skull's eye sockets and subconsciously looked away. Even if you know that the consciousness in this body is 33, even if you know that he is on your side, when you look directly into the eyes of the skeleton, you will still feel a palpitating feeling, that invisible oppression. The power does not come from 33 itself, but from the powerful God who is separated from here by countless time and space. The energy of the alien God is difficult to control by human consciousness. I don't know how Sansan did it, but his current state is very unstable, and the remaining consciousness is constantly being consumed by this power. His activity time is limited, and when his self-awareness completely disappears. Ivan paused and whispered, "You can treat him as a disposable consumable. Not saved. It can't be saved." Ivan sighed, "If I don't do this, his consciousness will continue to sink in the illusion, until it is completely extinguished. Now, at least he is awake." I know the hound glanced at 33 in this state silently, but there is one more thing. On Alpha Planet, using the power of the gods, won't it attract the attention of that existence? I remember Kaylan told me that after he merged with that body, he had to be extremely careful when using the body's ability. If he is not careful, he will be discovered by that existence, which will lead to disaster. No, the power of the ability God possessed by 33 is just a drop in the bucket compared to Kaylan. What's more, the brand belonging to the ability God has long been neutralized and erased, so it will not attract the attention of that existence. Yes. I have discussed this with Kaylan a long time ago, Ivan said. Does Kaylan also know about this? I know, he wants to save Sansan San more than any of us, but there is no way. Ivan said and sighed again. Actually, this is Sansan San's own choice. If you want to survive, you don't have to reshape your body and remain in the form of a conscious body. He can survive in pure ideological form for at least several decades, which is similar to the lifespan of a normal human being. But once the body is reshaped using the energy of the alien God, his conscious body will be eroded and impacted by this energy all the time. Decades will be shortened to dozens of hours. I persuaded him, but he still chose to reshape his body. Can he talk now? The hound asked again. No, the new body has no vocal organs. If you want to communicate with it, you can only use sign language or other methods, Ivan said. In order to extend the activity time of this body as much as possible, 33 all non-essential body structures and organs are omitted. The hound was still communicating with Ivan, and the reborn 33 on the other side had already rushed forward. He just waved his hand, and all the outer armor of Yagonactor's deck was lifted off. It smashed towards the enemy like a mountain. In less than a minute, 33 killed more than 1,000 independent individuals that split off from the wreckage of the battleship. This achievement was indeed brilliant, but compared with the total number of enemies, it was not enough to turn the tide of the entire battle. In a battle of this scale, if you want to be able to turn the tide of the battle on your own, you can't do it with individual combat power alone. Not even Kaylan can do it, unless he uses those dangerous powers. Go up. Go up all. Block the gap. Surround these monsters and beat them. We still have 30 seconds. In 30 seconds the next batch of monsters will be let in, and the deck must be cleared before then destroy all the monsters. Ivan took over the command position of the seriously injured hound. His left arm held a 0-1 rifle that was specially modified to be airtight for combat in the space environment, and his right arm was transformed into there were countless long and thick tentacles, and every time he waved, he could sweep out a blank area on the battlefield. Ivan did not tell the hound that before injecting the energy of the gods into 33, he first used himself as a test of quality. The energy of the alien god erased the imprint of that existence in the cells of the seed of erosion, and forcibly assimilated the remaining cells of the seed of erosion lurking in Ivan's body, and Ivan was able to take this power as his own. This kind of experiment causes irreversible damage to the body. When this crystal-like syringe was inserted into his body, Ivan's remaining life had already entered a countdown. According to his own estimation, in no more than 5 years, this power will completely wipe out his self-awareness and turn him into a real walking zombie. Of course, there is no remedy at all, as long as he can. If the conscious body is stripped of this physical body, Ivan still has a chance to survive. The craziest scientists, in the most important experiments, will regard themselves as the most critical experimental material. Any data obtained from observation is not as accurate as the feeling of personal experience. In Ivan's view, he should have died in the exile camp a few years ago, or merged with the corrosive seed, and was finally killed by the Security Bureau agents. As a person who died once, he not only valued his own life, but also looked at death very indifferently. He always felt that he owed other people a life, and perhaps now was the best time to repay the debt. Hundreds of tentacles, centered on Ivan, spread out in all directions. These tentacles clung to the deck of Yagunactor, gliding silently until they reached the feet of the prey, and then suddenly exploded. Or either it tightly wraps around the prey and strangles it to pieces, or it directly penetrates through the gaps in the structure and wreaks havoc inside the prey's body. Ivan's results were less than 33s, but not much less. After these two people who accepted the energy of the alien gods joined the battlefield, the pressure on the Survivor Alliance suddenly eased a lot, and the originally compressed front line began to slowly push back, but the speed of destroying monsters did not speed up. More or less, the increasing number of wounded and scrapped weapons and equipment has reduced the Survivor Alliance's firepower by more than one level. The addition of Ivan and 33 only made up for this gap. There are still 10 seconds, no, I can buy you 20 seconds at most. After 20 seconds, I have to turn on the energy shield again. The enemies brought in this time will be more powerful than the previous 2 batches. There are more together, Layton's anxious voice echoed in the communication channel. According to the console statistics, there are still 37% of the remaining enemies on the outer deck. If the third batch of these guys are allowed to rush in, if the enemies join together, your defense line will be broken through instantly. Big guy, please listen to me. If our defense line shows signs of collapse, you will close the space channel as soon as possible. You must not let these monsters enter the interior of Yagunactor. This ship, it is the hope for the future of mankind, and it must not be sunk here. The Hound leaned on a dilapidated artillery base, panting and saying to Layton, "No, if you close the space channel, wouldn't you be able to come back? We are not important. Don't worry about us. Just do as I say," Hound said angrily. "Besides, once the defense line is breached, will the people on the deck be able to evacuate into the ship alive?" I know," Layton gritted his teeth. "In 5 seconds, the energy shield is about to reach its limit, so be prepared." "Everything is ready," Chi Hanfan replied. His engineering mecha had joined the battle at some point. The 2 free mechanical arms picked up the 2 missing mecha-specific rifles and pointed them at the enemy. Shooting continued, while the other mechanical arms continued to refill the returned supply body with fuel and ammunition. "Let them in," Valentina said calmly. The external armor of the blasphemer mecha she was driving had all been removed, revealing the original appearance of the blasphemy, which was a heavy-duty armor-piercing weapon as big as a door panel. The sword body has long been severely deformed, and the energy shield covering the blade has become extremely unstable, flickering on and off. The undead troops were the ones who charged the most ferociously. The entire unit was trapped in the densest enemy area, fighting back and forth. Although they achieved the most results, they also suffered the greatest losses. In just a few minutes, there were more than a dozen black machines, but less than 10 were still standing. The end of the strong crossbow, now is the real end of the strong crossbow. Jolajito sighed and removed the empty shotgun drum, but when he reached his hand to his waist, he discovered that the shotgun he had just fired, the empty one, is the last drum. "I have no ammunitions." Jolajito turned his head and said to the Hound. The Hound coughed out 2 mouthfuls of blood and controlled the mechanical arm to throw a heavy assault rifle to him. This gun still has the last magazine left, so save it, Hound said. Everyone's situation is similar, there will be the last wave of enemies in a moment, kill them all, and we will win. Fortunately, I still have my axe. Zwilligito touched the tomahawk hanging on his back. I remember an elder told me that in the most difficult time of the battle, those who do not need ammunition and do not weapons that require fuel and no energy are the most reliable weapons. It's a pity that we are neither in the Amazon jungle nor on the savannah of your hometown. The enemies we face are not beasts with only teeth and claws. The Hound sighed. Don't die casually. Oh, that guy Kaylan must still be waiting for us to have a celebratory drink after we win the battle. After the Hound finished speaking, he raised his head and glanced directly above, just in time to see the extremely dim energy shield quietly extinguished, and densely packed monsters rushed over like a tide. This time, these monsters turned out to look like creatures on Earth: wolves, leopards, mastiffs, tigers, these beasts that most modern people have only seen in biology textbooks and documentaries were actually perfectly transformed by these independent individuals. It was simulated, except for the weird pale color of the body. Many details turned out to be exactly the same as these creatures that had become extinct thousands of years ago. Ha, ha! The Hound laughed dryly and patted Zwilligito's shoulder speechlessly. The slap in the face came really fast. It seems that your axe will come in handy this time. That's good. A look of excitement flashed in Zwilligito's eyes. He hung the rifle back on his waist, took off the battle axe and weighed it in his hand for a few times. Then he burst out with a Mongolian war cry. The propulsion backpack was fully powered, and rushed towards the herd. Damn it, even if I die here today, I still have to kill him happily. The Hound injected the last few potions into his body and rushed forward, not to be outdone. The ammunition has long been used up, and the weapons held on the four mechanical arms have turned into swords made of nino alloy, looking like a giant mechanical spider with its claws and teeth. Before Zwilligito and the Hound could come into contact with the beasts, a cold light swept across the front line of the beasts before the two of them. Wherever the cold light went, these carnivorous beasts that were extremely fierce just a second ago were in an instant, it turned into irregular corpses and scattered in all directions, floating in all directions in a weightless environment. Such a fast knife! The Hound was stunned for a moment and looked to one side. It's that boy Akira Asano. Damn it, when I was at the glacier ruins, I really misjudged him at first. It's not just once or twice that you made a mistake, Layton complained in the communication channel. Hang on, these are just the Vanguard's minions, the big guys are still behind. P.S. Today is the author's birthday, so it's not too much to ask for votes. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Enchenmi-san. Chapter 1070. Following the Beast is a group of warcraft that only appear in fantasy works. The most difficult thing about these warcraft is that they not only simulate the appearance, but also can display some special abilities. Various arcs, flames, and colorful energy rays raged on the battlefield. No one could explain why the flames spit out by these monsters could burn in a vacuum environment, but it was obvious that this was not a visual special effect. There were two people who could not dodge. The soldier was struck by tongues of fire and burned into two pieces of coke in the blink of an eye. The switching speed is too fast, I can't catch the gap. Yvonne murmured. What's the switching speed? Hound was stunned for a moment and asked. If these simulated monsters want to use those special abilities, they must simulate the corresponding organs, Yvonne said. For example, if it sprays flames, then it must need an organ that can secrete combustibles and oxygen. If to spray venom, you must have venom glands. Possessing these organs is equivalent to having weaknesses. If the glands that spray flames are exploded, the monster will burn itself or simply explode, but when I attack those when the monster's body is removed, their body structure becomes a meaningless mimetic structure, only the shape of those organs without actual function. Then the only way to get a fatal blow is to attack them when they attack, right? Zwilligito reacted instantly. The monster standing in front of him was a hydra that had only appeared in myths and legends. The 9 heads of this Hydra had different abilities. Even if one of the heads was blown, it would be severed. A new one will immediately grow on the neck. Just when the 4th head of the Hydra began to spray flames, Zwilligito rolled close to a position that was almost close to his body. He jumped up with the propeller behind him and used his battle axe to split open the flame-spitting head. With a silent explosion, burning viscous fluid immediately splashed out from the broken head. This fluid was contaminated by several other heads, and the flames immediately spread throughout the Hydra's body. Zwilligito's body was also contaminated with some fuel, but he quickly scraped off the fuel with a dagger at the first opportunity. The materials used in space combat are all flame-retardant materials, and there is no oxygen in the vacuum environment. As long as once the fuel secreted by the Hydra is stripped away, the flames on the body will naturally go out. Before everyone could be happy, they saw those fused individuals gathering together, stacking and merging with each other, and finally turned into a tall humanoid instrument. When they saw the outline of this humanoid instrument, many people on the deck, the soldiers, subconsciously took a step back. They were no strangers to this humanoid instrument. In fact, many of the soldiers present had survived that tragic battle. Although the Air Force fleet did not suffer too serious losses in that battle, it witnessed with my own eyes the tragic situation of the entire frontline troops on the ground being annihilated. "Ah, Alexander," a soldier shouted. The Alexander he was talking about was naturally not referring to Major General Alexander, the commander of Fleet Zero, but the giant who awakened from the ancient ruins after the mechanism of the Bronze City was activated, the secret army god Alexander. The humanoid giant machine in front of me is a scaled-down version of Alexander, but it is still over a kilometer tall. The surface of the giant machine is covered with metal armor engraved with mysterious inscriptions and crystallized circuits. The huge gears bite each other in an amazing way. The incredible method gave each part of the giant machine amazing mobility. Before the main structure of the humanoid giant machine was assembled, its arms had already launched an attack, leveling 2 towers that were desperately attacking it. Of anti-aircraft batteries. "What, Alexander, this is a humming zibe," Hound scolded. He picked up the last individual missile and directly pulled the trigger. The humanoid giant machine was too big, he didn't even think about it. Deliberate aiming and locking is required. The missile equipped with the crystal energy bomb warhead roars out of the barrel and goes straight to the most conspicuous set of gear shafts on the chest of the humanoid giant. Huge firelight exploded in mid-air along with the unique blue flame color of the crystal energy bomb. The humanoid giant weapon was unscathed. What blocked the missile was a layer of energy shield glowing with colorful luster. "Damn, this thing even simulates a shield generator," bah, the Hound spat. "It's simply more disgusting than the Leviathan at that time." Generally speaking, there are only 3 methods to deal with targets with energy shields. The first method, pouring firepower into the shield like crazy, directly hitting the energy transmission efficiency and consumption efficiency of the shield generator, leaving no response, or directly overloading. The shield will naturally disappear. The second method is to use a large mass physical weapon to forcefully break through the energy shield. As long as the weapon is not completely ablated during the process of penetrating the energy shield, it can attack to the enemy hiding behind the shield. As for the third method, it is to use the gap between the energy shield and the body to launch an attack, because the shield cannot be close to the body, which will only destroy the target protected by the shield. It was also burned together. The original Alexander also had an energy shield, but Kaylan and the others were still able to move on its surface because there was a gap hundreds of meters wide between the shield and Alexander. Ivan turned his head and said to Zwilligito, Asano Akira and others, 33 just sent me a message. He said that he has a way to send people behind the energy shield, but close contact with this person humanoid giant machines are extremely dangerous. You decide for yourself. There's nothing to hesitate about. Let's go together. The Hound still wanted to show off, but he stumbled under his feet and almost fell to his knees on the ground. Old dog, you should rest. According to the data sent back by the monitoring equipment, your physical condition, is not generally bad. Layton said in the communication channel, if you follow me, you will not be able to help them. On the contrary, it will become a burden to them. Hum, Hound cursed angrily, then I'll stay outside and help you attract this big guy's firepower. You guys, don't die in there. Don't set a flag for us. Wasn't this something you were most afraid of before? Yvonne laughed and scolded, are you ready? Come on when you are ready. As soon as the words fell, the deck under the feet of Yvonne, Asano Akira, Valentina, Zwilligito and 33 seemed to melt, and one after another appeared on the extremely tough nino alloy without any warning. One by one, these holes swallowed them up in the next second. 33 manipulated the nino alloy to create an underground passage on the shallow level of Yagonactor's deck, and the exit of the passage was right under the feet of the giant humanoid machine. Countless nino alloys gathered at the feet of the giant humanoid machine, forming a ladder that carried them up quickly. Valentina controlled the blasphemer mecha to continuously pour firepower on the humanoid giant machine. Her key attack targets were the exposed gears on the humanoid giant machine. For Alexander, those gears are the most important driving mechanism, although the interlocking gears seem to be a very primitive mechanical structure. In fact, each gear has a very sophisticated crystallization circuit and energy transmission array inside. The complex program of a gear is no less than a supercomputer of human civilization. Every time a gear is destroyed, Alexander's overall energy operation efficiency and body coordination will decrease. When the number of destroyed gears reaches a certain number, Alexander will part of the body will be directly paralyzed and unable to move. This information comes from a paper written by the expert team responsible for cleaning the battlefield of the Bronze City ruins after studying the remains of Alexander. The tactical analysis team also came to a similar conclusion after watching the hand-to-hand combat between the Colossus of Fire and Alexander. At that time, the Colossus of Fire controlled by Kaylan seemed to be beating the Old Master to death with random punches, but in fact, every punch of the Colossus of Fire hit Alexander's joints or the areas with the highest concentration of exposed gears, forcing the Prophet gave up the fight and had to use ultimate judgment to make a desperate move. Valentina has naturally seen this video, and of course she also knows that Alexander's weakness is those exposed gears. It's just that under normal circumstances, attacks from the outside cannot penetrate Alexander's energy shield. These weaknesses naturally, it cannot be considered a weakness. The plasma rapid-fire cannon of the blasphemer mecha had hit the barrel until it turned red. In the process of ascending the ladder, Valentina shattered at least more than 200 gears, large and small. The possible results were only it just made the movement of the giant humanoid machine stagnant for a moment, and then it had no effect anymore. Humanoid giant machines and Alexander are essentially two types of enemies after all. Although humanoid giant machines are called giant machines, they are actually transformed from countless individual creatures with mimicry abilities. These creatures can change their own bodies at will. The body structure: whenever a gear is damaged on the humanoid giant machine, the parts around the damaged gear will immediately change, spawning a brand new gear to fill the gap. Although this self-healing ability is not very fast, it is difficult to suppress the giant humanoid machine just by relying on the firepower of the blasphemer mecha. The alloy ladder rose until it was at the same height as the shoulders of the giant humanoid machine before stopping. In the next moment, countless pairs of slender jointed limbs sprouted from both sides of the ladder. From a distance, it looked like an upright giant metal centipede-like. These jointed limbs suddenly tightened, and the sharp front end pierced the body of the humanoid giant machine. The entire centipede was firmly attached to the body of the humanoid giant machine, and through violent twisting, it wreaked havoc on the humanoid giant machine. External structure. Remember, this big guy only has weaknesses when it launches an attack. After boarding the giant humanoid weapon, Zwilligito said loudly to the others, "There is no point in attacking it now, no matter how serious it is. It can repair any trauma on its own. Attack. Isn't it always attacking?" Ivan stabbed his tentacles into the shoulders of the giant humanoid machine to stabilize his figure. While they were talking, the giant humanoid machine stepped flat again. An anti-aircraft battery. This was a fort that had survived the first 2 rounds of battles. The dozen soldiers in the fort didn't even have time to evacuate, so they were razed to the ground along with the fort. This kind of attack is useless. In our eyes, it is an attack, but for it, it is just a step forward, Zwilligito shouted. Valentina just tried to attack its joints. Indeed, you can restrict its movement, but only for a few seconds, which is meaningless. What kind of attack is meaningful? Valentina asked. The greater the power of the attack, the more deadly the weaknesses exposed, Zwilligito said solemnly, the ultimate judgment. If this humanoid giant machine can release the ultimate judgment like Alexander, when it uses the skill, we attack the mechanism that emits the light with all our strength, and we should be able to completely destroy it. But I feel that it doesn't need to use the ultimate judgment at all. The hound's voice came from the communication channel. The physical attack alone is enough to kill all of us. Even if it has to use the ultimate judgment, it is probably leave it to Yagonactor's ultimate move. No. I have a way to induce it to use the skill. 33, it's up to you. Ivan took out a container that seemed to be carved from a whole piece of crystal from his backpack, and threw it hard at 33. 13. Deep under 33's armor was an arm completely made of flowing nano alloy, which caught the container and then crushed it. An indescribable majestic power suddenly swept across the entire battlefield, but in the next moment, this power disappeared completely, as if the terrifying aura that everyone felt just now was just an illusion for a moment. Valentina, what is that? 1/millionth of a unit of supernatural energy, Ivan replied. I saw the scarlet fire in the eye sockets of the 33 skeletons instantly surged, and the shape of the metal centipede wrapped around the humanoid giant machine suddenly increased several times. The outer layer of the deck within a radius of several kilometers cracked, and nano-alloys of different shapes were broken. The fragments were attracted by an invisible force and flew towards the metal centipede, and then merged with it. The metal centipede, which had greatly increased in size and mass, directly wrapped around the giant humanoid machine several times, tying the opponent's arms and legs tightly. The gears rubbed violently against the metal centipede's body, and dazzling sparks fell from the air like fire rain. Falling, the giant humanoid machine that was heading towards the human defense line was finally forced to stop. High energy reaction. High energy reaction has been detected in the giant machine. There are 3 locations. 2 are in the chest, and the last one is in the waist and abdomen. The specific coordinates have been sent to you, Lei, who is sitting in the Yagonactor control room. Suddenly he shouted urgently.